Chapter 8:18. Young Master Run. I can't hold on much longer. At the same time, Goji's roar came from outside the cave. There was still a chance. A glimmer of hope was rekindled in Go Xuxing's heart. He couldn't care less about anything else. He ran like crazy. As for the little unicorn, he didn't dare to think about it anymore. Even if he caught it now, he would definitely be targeted by the one-horned, golden-eyed Beast King. He would probably be killed before he could escape the mountain. Bang! However, when Go Xuxing's figure reached the door of the cave, he felt a pain in his consciousness. His vision darkened, and he stumbled and fell flat on his face. A spirit-eating bug. Go Xuxing was furious. In his consciousness, his Yuan Shan was covered with a layer of mysterious armor, and it was defending against a rice grain-sized spirit-eating bug's attack. It must be that bastard's doing. Go Xuxing was furious. He was one of the top figures of the younger generation, and now he had suffered a series of defeats. Now, his enemy was taking advantage of him. How could he tolerate this? If he didn't have a secret treasure to defend his Yuan Shan, he would have been killed. Don't let me catch you. Go Xuxing took a deep breath, got up from the ground, and continued to run. He sensed that the spirit-eating bug had decisively retreated from his body and disappeared. This proved that the terrifying bug was being manipulated. Go Xuxing couldn't care about all of this at this moment. Right when he just escaped from the abode, he felt an extremely terrifying force descend from the sky. Golden lightning that covered the sky poured down densely like a rainstorm. It was filled with an aura of destruction. This made him feel cold all over, and his hands and feet were cold. It was over. He was still one step away. Young Master Run. A loud roar sounded in his ears. At this critical moment, Goji's figure suddenly appeared in front of Go Xuxing. This made Go Xuxing overjoyed. He had just escaped from a desperate situation, and he hurriedly ran. Behind him, Goji's painful screams rang out. The sky was filled with golden lightning. It was an angry attack from the one-horned, golden-eyed Beast King. It was terrifying, and it covered the entire area. Even if Go Chi resisted with all his might, he was still struck to the point his hair emitted smoke while his entire body trembled like a sieve. His skin was charred black and cracked apart, and he even coughed up blood without end. It was too tragic. A meaty aroma wafted from his body, as if he had been cooked by lightning. However, Go Chi was worthy of being a true life and death king. At this moment, he was resisting with all his strength. His whole body was shining with a bloody light. Even though he was seriously injured, he wasn't killed on the spot. At this time, Go Xuxing had already fled far away and met up with the other Black Sea Tengu clan powerhouses. They were lucky enough to escape the calamity. However, his expression was extremely unsightly while his eyes almost split apart from rage. He couldn't help but let out a long howl towards the sky, and his voice was filled with ruthless rage. He completely understood that everything that had happened earlier was a trap that the enemy had dug a long time ago, and they intended to use the strength of the horned golden-eyed Beast King to destroy them. Previously, they were completely unaware of it, thinking that they had discovered a peerless opportunity and foolishly jumped into the pit. This made Go Xuxing want to slap himself. What kind of bullsh asterisk luck was this? Was there really such bad luck? Immediately, the enraged Go Xuxing's body stiffened as he sensed a frightening and cold was sweeping over. Evidently, his howl had attracted the attention of the horned golden-eyed Beast King in the distance, and it had swept over with its consciousness. This made Go Xuxing's feet shiver. He was shocked, scared, and aggrieved. Mother asterisk her, I'm so unlucky. I was just venting my emotions, and now I've become the enemy of the Beast King, and I don't even dare to resist. This feeling almost drove him crazy. Run! In the distance, Go Chi finally couldn't hold on any longer. His injuries were too heavy, and he fled in panic. Let's go! Go Xuxing's heart trembled. He suppressed his anger and grievance, and left with the others without hesitation. Roar! Between heaven and earth, the horned golden-eyed Beast King roared. Its voice was like a clap of thunder, shaking the 9 heavens and 10 earths. It was very angry, and golden light shot out from its body. It was dazzling and bright, illuminating the universe. But in the end, it didn't chase after them. After roaring for a long time, its figure flashed and rushed into the depths of the cave. Obviously, it was worried that the little horned, golden-eyed beast king would be in danger. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the world returned to silence. However, the vicinity of this nameless spirit mountain was already full of ruins, and the earth was crisscrossed with ravines. The mountains, ancient forests, and grass in the vicinity had all been destroyed in the battle. They were bare and filled with smoke. This battle was undoubtedly terrifying, and the most terrifying was undoubtedly the horned, golden-eyed beast king. Its strength was so monstrous that it could suppress a king of the Black Sea Tengu tribe. It was so tyrannical that it was a complete mess. If it hadn't been worried about the safety of the little horned, golden-eyed beast king, Lin Sun, Go Su Xing, and the others would all have died here. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. At this moment, he was hiding next to a small mound dozens of miles away from the nameless spirit mountain, and he covered his body with miasma chi. Moreover, he wasn't afraid of being discovered by the horned, golden-eyed beast king. With the help of the vast universe arc, he could completely avoid being killed by a king. This had already been proven in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea. What made Lin Sun regretful was that he didn't manage to kill all the Black Sea Tengu tribe members in one fell swoop. However, Lin Sun was also satisfied. At least half of the enemy's elite forces had been killed, and 2 half-step kings had died tragically, and 1 king had been seriously injured. This was a heavy blow. What a pity for the golden marrow jade liquid. Lin Sun thought about it and finally turned around to leave. He knew that he had no chance to get more golden marrow jade liquid. He even suspected that if he dared to approach it, he would inevitably attract an even more terrifying attack from the horned, golden-eyed beast king. After all, he had taught the little horned, golden-eyed beast a lesson in front of the pool in the depths of the cave residence. Although it was a cub, it was a descendant of a king. If the horned, golden-eyed beast king knew that he had spanked the little guys but grabbed its tail and shook its head hard just to make it spit out the golden marrow jade liquid, the horned, golden-eyed beast king would definitely go berserk. No. After flying for hundreds of miles, Lin Sun suddenly realized the problem. He immediately stopped and fell into contemplation. In the fierce battle just now, the king among the Black Sea Tengu tribe members has been seriously injured. This is the best time to kill the old dog. It would be a pity if I missed it. Lin Sun's black eyes were shining. He knew very well that the horned, golden-eyed beast king had firmly remembered him and would inevitably chase him crazily on the way. Although Lin Sun was not afraid, there would be many twists and turns and dangers if he was entangled like this. Instead of that, it was better to solve the hidden danger once and for all. With insignificant bow and blue sky arrow, I could try to kill it, but the backfire of the bow and arrow will become more and more serious. Lin Sun hesitated for a moment and finally made up his mind. Forget it. I can seal the bow and arrow in the future and suppress them in the wordless tower with golden towelite. I will never use them again unless I encounter a life-or-death crisis. Whoosh! He flashed back along the original road and began to actively search for the traces and whereabouts of Go Xuxing and others. He had to hurry up. Lin Sun knew clearly that once the king of the Black Sea Tengu tribe recovered from his injury, he would have no chance to kill him. As for Xia Xiaochong, it was the safest for her to stay in the Golden Tower. Those dogs' noses were too sensitive, and it was inconvenient to take Xia Xiaochong with him. Lin Sun planned to release Xia Xiaochong when he arrived at the Green Mountains in Fengxi Province, which was undoubtedly the safest and most worry-free way. What a great shame! On a barren, rugged mountain, Go Xuxing's face was livid and his teeth were almost crushed by the cold wind. The casualties had been counted. This time, on that nameless spirit mountain alone, they had lost 2 half-step king warriors and 37 elite clansmen. This loss was too heavy, like a knife stabbing into Go Xuxing's heart, making it bleed. Those clansmen were all forces that followed him. Every death was a significant loss to him. Especially the 2 half-step king warriors, Go Shan and Go Hai, were his protectors specially arranged by the clan. Other clansmen could not enjoy such special treatment at all. But now they were all dead. Go Xiuxing did not even need to think about it. Even if he could successfully complete this mission, when he returned to the clan, he would definitely be criticized, questioned, ridiculed, and attacked. This would not only affect his reputation in the clan, it might even cause him to lose the care and attention of the elders. He would completely lose his power, and his status would plummet. The more Go Xiuxing thought about it, the more hatred he felt. His expression was extremely ugly, and his face was so dark that it seemed like it was about to drip water. Nearby, Go Dong and the other powerful warriors were silent. They were also extremely angry. As Black Sea Tengu clansmen, when had they ever suffered such a huge loss? Young master, did you see the target's appearance clearly? Suddenly, an old voice sounded, seeming a bit weak and lacking in energy. It was Go Su, who had suffered serious injuries. He was currently healing his injuries with the golden essence jade liquid that Go Xiuxing had given him, so he did not worry about any side effects. It was just that to completely recover was not something that could be done in a short period of time. According to his estimation, it would take at least 3 days for the wounds to heal, and this was with the help of the golden essence jade, liquid, and many other miraculous medicines. Otherwise, the recovery would be even slower. That guy, Go Xiuxing recalled carefully, and after a long time he frowned and said, I vaguely saw that it seemed to be a teenager, not like the half-step king we thought. As he spoke up to hear, his eyes suddenly shot out a wisp of frightening dark green divine light, and he said resolutely, Yes, I might not be able to determine his age, but I can smell the aura on his body. I can be sure that he isn't a half-step king at all, and he isn't even at the reincarnation development stage, but at the paradise stage. But his breath is stronger than that of an ordinary practitioner in the Tao Insight realm. His blood and qi are burning like the sun, and his qi is boiling like a furnace. If I'm not mistaken, this little bastard should also be an outstanding figure in the younger generation. If Lin Sun knew that the basis of Go Xiuxing's judgment of his cultivation came from his keen sense of smell, who knew what he would think, all the powerful warriors in the field were dumbfounded. Who would have thought that the opponent who had made them suffer so miserably was just a teenager in the Tao Insight realm? P.S. The 5th update is here. The goal of 5 updates for 3 days in a row has been achieved. Of course, this is just to make up for the previous updates, and it is not a breakthrough, but I feel a lot more at ease. Many people have given me monthly votes and gifts these 3 days. Thank you. There will be a lot of breakthroughs this year. This is the goal I set in 17 years. After all, when I wrote Rune Emperor, I had many breakthroughs, but the Chosen One has not done it even once. It really makes me feel ashamed and ashamed. No matter what, when you do something, you must persevere and stick to your beliefs. Let's encourage each other. Chapter 819. A young man in the Tao Insight realm. Gochi was also stunned and trembled with anger. An ant-like thing had dared to regard their people as food. Then he had dug a big hole and caused them heavy casualties. He was a king realm cultivator, and he had been famous for many years. He didn't even take ordinary king realm cultivators seriously. But now he had been badly injured and almost died. An indescribable sense of shame and anger welled up in his heart. He wished he could drag Lin Sun out and eat him alive. Young master, rest assured, when I recover, I will capture him as soon as possible. I will make him beg for death. Gochi said coldly. A famous king realm cultivator had been humiliated by a young man in the Tao Insight realm. If this got out, he would become the laughingstock of the entire ancient desolation realm. Go Xiuxing was also in a bad mood. He said with a livid face, Actually, I want to cook him alive and eat him myself. He was a top figure of the young generation with the title of Thousand Executioner, but he had been tricked and set up by a peer. This was absolutely a great shame. At this moment, a chuckle came from the void in the distance, and a treasure ship appeared above the clouds. On the treasure ship stood a handsome figure, his clothes and black hair fluttering in the wind. It was Lin Sun. It's you. Go Xiuxing recognized him with a single glance. That young man was the target of their operation this time. How dare you? You actually dared to show yourself. Go Shuxing was so angry that he started laughing. His hatred was burning, and his eyes were extremely cold and terrifying. He didn't expect that Lin Sun not only didn't escape, but also appeared in front of him. Was he showing off? He really didn't know what was good for him. I can smell it. He has a trace of that girl's breath on him. He is our target. The other black demon dogs also shouted when they realized Lin Sun's identity. In an instant, the anger that had accumulated in their hearts completely exploded. It was this damned little bastard who ate one of their companions and caused them to suffer so badly, causing them to suffer heavy casualties. Now, he actually dared to take the initiative to come here. This was clearly a blatant provocation. Go to hell. Go Chi was even more direct. The moment he determined Lin Sun's identity, he stood up for meditation and slapped him hard. Boom! A horrible and dazzling bloody light wrapped in the divine glory of King's Way made the sky collapse and the clouds burst, covering Lin Sun. However, before he attacked, Lin Sun had already escaped on the vast universe Arkansas. He was so fast that he easily avoided the strike of a King Realm cultivator. Go Chi was stunned. He couldn't believe it. Even though he was seriously injured at the moment and could only exert less than 10% of his strength, its power was not something that a young man at the Tao Insight stage could dodge. You want to leave? Stay here. There was an indescribable anger in Go Sha's heart. A little bug dared to come out and provoke him. If he let him escape, where would his face go? Go Chi. His figure soared into the sky. Ignoring his injuries, he chased after them. This was the confidence of a king. The strength of the King Tao reigned above the 5 great realms of cultivation, and it allowed one to comprehend life and death to forge the Tao of Kings. Even if one was on the verge of death, it wasn't something that just anyone could disrespect or violate. Go Dong seemed to be extremely anxious when he saw Go Che chasing after him. He quickly said, "Young master, there's something strange. This child is as treacherous as a ghost and has already tricked us miserably before. Now, he has appeared abnormally and is provoking us. I'm afraid he's going to use some kind of crafty plot again." Go Su-Xing also realized this. This was too abnormal. That guy had just appeared and then fled. Who knew what kind of trouble he was hiding in his stomach? Kugo Ding had already charged forward with incredible speed, and they didn't even have time to warn him. Don't worry. Even if Lord Ming is heavily injured, killing that fellow would be as easy as slaughtering a chicken. Go Su-Xing took a deep breath. His green eyes were filled with coldness. Despicable bugs like him don't know what a king is. "Young master, what should we do?" Go Dong asked. "Chase." Go Su-Xing's expression was filled with murderous intent. "I won't rest until I see him killed with my own eyes." As he spoke, he'd already flashed up and soared into the sky. When Go Dong and the other powerhouses saw this, they didn't dare to delay and hurriedly followed. Boom! Terrifying blood-red divine radiance shot out, flattening mountains one after another. Rocks and ancient trees exploded, and terrifying cracks tore through the void. This was Go Deng's attack. It was overflowing with divine power, and it chased after green darkness to attack Lin Sun. It was terrifying and dangerous. The vast universe arc flew like lightning, breaking through the sound barrier. Lin Sun exerted its speed to the extreme, and in the blink of an eye, it was tens of thousands of meters away. However, it was impossible to escape Go Deng's pursuit in a short time. This old guy was a king who stood at the peak of the world, and he was incredibly strong. Even though he was seriously injured, the power he could erupt with could be called terrifying. "Little bastard, I'd like to see what tricks you're going to play this time." Go Deng's expression was cold. He had been seriously injured before, and his skin was charred and his clothes were ragged. But this didn't affect his divine power at the moment. Obviously, he saw through Lin Sun's intentions and realized that Lin Sun had deliberately provoked him just now in order to lead him away. However, Go Deng wasn't afraid. Unless that single-horned, golden-eyed beast king appeared again, Go Deng couldn't imagine how much of a storm a young man in Tao Insight Realm could cause. Thinking of this, Go Deng's heart trembled. Single-horned, golden-eyed Beast King? This little bastard couldn't be thinking of using the same trick again and leading him to that nameless spirit mountain, right? This caused his expression to fluctuate. Finally, he gritted his teeth and let out a heaven-shaking roar. Boom! In an instant, his entire body erupted with boundless bloody light, and he actually transformed into a large dog that was hundreds of feet long, with fur as black as silk and a body as large as a mountain. His eyes were like a blood-red lake, and his fangs were snow-white and sharp. His entire body emitted a bloody, baleful aura that was like a tide, causing the world to change colors. Black Nightmare Tengu. In ancient times, a single roar from the ancestor of the Black Nightmare Tengu could shatter the vault of the sky and make stars fall. And now, Go Deng had revealed his true form, and his king's aura was even more terrifying. He opened his bloody mouth and directly spat out a raging flame that was as black as ink, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Black Nightmare Flame. In the legends, this was a terrifying divine flame that could burn gods, and it was the most powerful innate inheritance of the Black Nightmare Tengu. Swoosh! Lin Sun steered the vast universe arc to dodge, and a ghastly hole had been burned open in the space where he was just now. Some sporadic black nightmare flames fell down and instantly incinerated the ground, and the ancient mountains and trees were instantly turned into ashes. This scene was undoubtedly too terrifying. Lin Sun's heart went cold. This old dog was terrifying indeed. It had already suffered heavy injuries, yet it still possessed such monstrous, ferocious might. Bang! The space collapsed. The large black dog rampaged about, and its entire body was suffused with bloody divine radiance as it pounced towards Lin Sun. Its enormous claws covered the heavens and the earth as it fiercely clawed at Lin Sun. Lin Sun realized the danger he was in, and he steered the vast universe arc with all his strength. Swoosh! He fled at his limits. This caused Go Deng to frown and be shocked. He was able to discern with a single glance that the treasured ship Lin Sun was controlling was actually no ordinary treasure. It was extremely mystical and had a faintly discernible aura of the Saint Tao. An incomplete saint artifact? No wonder this kid dared to provoke me so arrogantly. Go Deng's eyes shot out a terrifying divine light. He was even more determined to kill Lin Sun. Not only did he want to kill Lin Sun, he also wanted to seize the treasure. Fortunately, this old dog has suffered heavy injuries. Otherwise, I'm afraid he would chase me to the ends of the earth. Lin Sun's black eyes surged with an icy cold light. At the same time, Go Deng's heart was seething with unspeakable grievance and anger. If he was at his peak, he would have slapped Lin Sun to death a long time ago. But now he was actually unable to kill Lin Sun for a long time, and this caused him to feel rather embarrassed and annoyed. He issued an icy threat. "Little guy, you can't escape. If you don't die today, then I'll take my head and give it to you." "Ha! The dog's head is too hard, and it doesn't have much meat. I don't like to eat it." Lin Sun's laughter came from within the vast universe. Arkansas Go Deng's face was gloomy, and he was completely enraged. Did this little bastard really think he couldn't do anything to him? Bang! He couldn't care about his injuries and exhaustion, and he chased with all his strength. In the following time, one chased and the other fled, whistling in the vast wilderness. Along the way, many mountains collapsed, and towering ancient trees burst into pieces. Lin Sun calculated the time silently. What moved him was that even though the old dog was seriously injured, he still looked very terrible. Until now, there was no sign of weakness, and his divine power was terrifying. Originally, he wanted to test how much strength the old dog had left, and then kill him with insignificant bow and blue sky arrow. Only in this way could he be absolutely safe. Who would have thought that this old dog was actually still so tyrannical? Lin Sun suddenly realized that he had underestimated the terror of the King realm, which was far beyond those half-step king realm. This was the real demeanor of a king. Perhaps Lin Sun had seen many powerful kings before, such as Zhao Tailai, Zhao Xingye, and so on, But that was just an experience, not a personal confrontation and experience. Now, Lin Sun finally realized how terrible the power of a king was. Go Deng had been seriously injured, but he was still so terrible. What would happen if he was in his heyday? Puppy, you are really at your wit's end. Do you want to use the same trick again? Do you want to use the power of the one-horned, golden-eyed Beast King to deal with me? Ridiculous. Suddenly, Go Deng's disdainful and cold shout came from behind. Lin Sun realized that he had escaped back to the area near the nameless spirit mountain unconsciously and was about to approach. This made Lin Sun speechless, for he never thought of using the same trick again. He even suspected that once he appeared there, the one-horned, golden-eyed Beast King would also deal with him at all costs. After all, he had stolen more than 10 kilograms of golden marrow jade liquid and bullied its cub. In this case, how could it let him go? Not to mention using its power to deal with the old dog. Whoosh! Suddenly, Lin Sun stopped and stood upright on the vast universe Arkansas, looking at Go Deng, who was chasing from afar. He took out insignificant bow and blue sky arrow. He had dragged the old dog for a long time, which should have consumed a lot of his strength. Besides, he was seriously injured. In any case, it was time to win. Chapter 820. Little bastard, why don't you run away? Go Rue suddenly turned into a human figure and came to Lin Sun. His face was cold, and his body was full of bloody brilliance. The pressure of a king was overwhelming. At this moment, he was very relaxed. When he chased Lin Sun all the way, he was also very vigilant, suspecting that Lin Sun had ulterior motives. But now he finally saw that Lin Sun's so-called intention was nothing more than to repeat the same trick. He wanted to suppress him with the one-horned, golden-eyed Beast King, which made him feel ridiculous. He had been cheated once. Would he be cheated a second time? Obviously, this guy had run out of tricks. Run away? Why should I run away? Lin Sun also smiled. His white teeth shone brilliantly in the sun. Don't you think the feng shui here is very good? Feng shui? Go Rue frowned. He felt that this kid was very abnormal. Out of caution, he didn't rush to take action. You're about to die. Do you start to talk nonsense? Old dog, I'm not joking. This is the burial place I specially prepared for you. Lin Sun said with a smile. Go Rue's face darkened. As he opened and closed his eyes, his killing intent burst out, making the world tremble. At this time, Lin Sun still dared to provoke him like this. It was unbearable. Buzz. At this moment, Lin Sun took action. The power that had been accumulated in his body for a long time reached an unprecedented peak in an instant, making his whole body steamed with dreamy green clouds. Buzz. The insignificant bow was pulled to the fullest, and the arrow of blue sky made a low and clear sound. At this moment, Lin Sun was like an incarnation of an ancient archer. His back was tall and straight, and his arms were wide open. An invisible and peerless killing intent rushed straight to the fighting bull like smoke. It was too frightening. Different from the past, Lin Sun ran the two inherited powers of fighting, Saint Method and Yazi's wrath this time, and his spirit soared to an unprecedented level. His fighting spirit was boiling, which made his momentum different. He was like the god of fighting who fought in the 9 heavens and 10 earths, and his fighting spirit was burning the world. There was no doubt that this was definitely Lin Sun's strongest attack since he started his cultivation. He ran all his power to the extreme. It had to be said that Go Rue was terrible. As a king, he instantly sensed a fatal threat. His face suddenly changed, and he turned back without hesitation. Boom! He transformed into an enormous black sea tengu and stepped through the void as if he was teleporting. His speed was so fast that it was shocking. What a terrifying aura. This brat lured me here just to bring out this killing weapon to kill me? Besides that, what sort of bow and arrow are those? They actually make me feel great terror. Could it be a pair of Saint Dao weapons? Damn it! How could this little bastard possess so many treasures? If I had known earlier, I would have made a move earlier and completely destroyed him. While fleeing madly, Go Shu's face was gloomy, and he clenched his teeth so hard that they almost broke. He was a dignified king, but he only wanted to kill a small bug in the Tao Insight realm. But he couldn't chase after the hand that he couldn't, which was already shameful enough. But now he had been scared off. This caused Go Gue to be infuriated to the point he almost exploded. How could he have imagined that the young man he'd taken to be like an insect would actually be so difficult to deal with? However, he didn't dare to not flee. That terrifying and lethal danger caused him to not dare to hesitate in the slightest. Boom! Suddenly, Goshu's face changed abruptly. He suddenly found that a golden thunderbolt had abruptly descended from the sky, and the electric arcs flickered with a peerless, destructive aura. Oh no! He was so shocked that his soul almost left his body, and his scalp almost exploded. How could he have imagined that such a killing intent would suddenly flash across the way of his escape? All of a sudden, he was caught off guard and had to dodge. His figure rushed out violently, and he moved a distance of thousands of meters, narrowly avoiding the golden thunderbolt. However, just at this moment, his whole body stiffened, and he felt a fatal, killing intent had attacked him. "I'll fight you to the death." At this moment, Goshu fully displayed the decisiveness and ruthlessness of a king. His whole body surged with the terrifying divine brilliance of the Great Way, and his spirit seemed to be burning. His body moved forward instead of retreating, and he pounced on Lin Sun in the distance. Boom! In an instant, the arrow of blue sky punched a huge hole in Goshu's body, and half of his body exploded with flesh and blood flying in all directions. If it were any other practitioner, they would have been killed a long time ago after suffering such a blow. However, the terrible thing was that Goshu was still rushing forward, and his whole body was steaming with a terrible breath of destruction, which made the heaven and the earth wail. In the distance, Lin Sun's face was pale, and he felt weak all over. But at this moment his face was solemn, and he was caught off guard. He had thought that the arrow would be enough to kill Goshu, who had been seriously injured for a long time, but he never thought that this old dog was so tough. This was the king. The 5 realms of cultivation were like 5 great mountains, which made the practitioners in the world struggle hard to seek. And the king stood above the mountains, beyond the 5 realms, overlooking the world. The power he controlled had already seen through the barrier of life and death, and he began to seek the opportunity of immortality. How could such a transcendent existence be so easy to kill? In the past, Lin Sun had only killed a half-step king, and he had seen a real king being killed. But after all, he had never really fought against a king, so he naturally didn't know how terrifying a king was. Now, when he clearly realized this, the situation had already become dangerous. "Little bastard, go to hell." Goshu's eyes almost split apart from rage, and he'd gone completely mad and berserk. When a king was enraged, mountains and rivers changed, and rivers flowed with blood. Not to mention that this was Goshu's counterattack before his death, and it was extremely terrifying. In a nearby area, the heavens and earth collapsed, and the light of the Tao rumbled. It was an expanse of chaos, and the signs of doomsday were terrifying to the extreme. If this were to occur in a city where all the living beings in the world gathered, then it was bound to cause an immeasurable calamity. On the other hand, Lin Sun's vital energy had been completely locked down, and he felt a suffocating pressure of danger. Swoosh! He couldn't be bothered about anything else. He used the rage of Yazi secret technique to ignite his blood essence, squeezing out his potential to the limit, and then he controlled the vast universe arc to flee. But he was a bit too slow in the end, and Goshu's claw smashed fiercely onto the vast universe Arkansas bang. The vast universe arc smashed directly into the ground, causing smoke and dust to rise into the sky. Moreover, Lin Sun instantly suffered a heavy injury, and he suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood while the bones and tendons in his entire body almost collapsed. It was too terrifying. If it weren't for the vast universe arc being a damaged Saint artifact, then it absolutely wouldn't have been able to block this strike, and it would have been impossible for Lin Sun to survive. And what was most fatal was that the arrow just now had nearly exhausted all of Lin Sun's strength, causing his entire body to weaken. Now that he had suffered a heavy injury, it was simply adding hail to hail. Die! In the void, Goshu's ruined body roared out loud. At this time, he was like a demon god making a final desperate strike. His expression was fierce and horrifying, and he released terrifying black nightmare flames that covered the void towards Lin Sun. Whoosh! The vast universe arc flickered, narrowly avoiding it. Lin Sun poured golden quintessence jade liquid into his mouth. He had thrown caution to the wind, exhausting all of his strength to escape. He could already see that this old dog was only having the last burst of energy before death. This was his final counterattack, and as time passed, he was doomed to be unable to persist. You still want to run? Goshu went crazy. With a loud bang, his figure flickered in the void, as if he were teleporting, and he instantly caught up. However, before he could make a move, another golden thunderbolt suddenly descended from the sky with a loud rumble. Kacha! The void was torn apart. The golden thunder was incomparably dazzling, filled with a destructive aura. It directly struck Goshu's body, causing him to stagger and almost fall from the void. You again! Goshu flew into a rage, his eyes dripping blood. He looked towards the distant, nameless spirit mountain. This king will destroy your nest. Bang! He opened his mouth and spat out a mass of black nightmare flames. It blotted out the skies like a vast sea, rumbling and burning the void as it covered the distant nameless spirit mountain. At the same time, his figure wildly raced through the void. He lifted a hand and slashed out at the vast universe Arkansas Dong. The vast universe arc was struck away like a broken kite. As for Lin Sun, he didn't know how many bones in his body were broken. He coughed up blood again and again, his complexion turning incomparably pale. But he clenched his teeth and didn't give up. He controlled the vast universe arc and continued to flee. Damn it, Goshu had already gone completely insane. He never imagined that the vast universe arc would be so sturdy that it would save Lin Sun's life twice in a row. Die! Goshu roared. But at this moment, his whole body stiffened. The wound on his chest that had been pierced by the blue sky arrow split open. Half of his body had already been destroyed, and the attack just now was only a desperate counterattack. But now, he couldn't suppress his injuries any longer. The remaining half of his body also began to show signs of disintegration. No! At the moment of death, Goshu finally felt fear. He began to panic and restlessness. He was a king who had already begun to explore the road to immortality. How could he be willing to die like this? He still had to wait for the Great World War to come, to explore the mystery of becoming a saint, and also, too much unwillingness filled his heart, and Goshu's state of mind was on the verge of collapse. He knew that he was really finished this time. It was just that when he thought that he would be dragged to death by a young man at the Tao Insight Realm, Goshu felt a stifling sense of madness. He was too unwilling to die in such a pathetic way. Bang! Goshu dragged his broken body that was on the verge of collapse and ran wildly through the void, wanting to perish together with Lin Sun before he died. But he didn't discover that as he ran, his flesh and blood were rapidly disintegrating and falling to the ground. Only when he caught up to the vast universe arc and was about to perish together with it, did he discover to his amazement that he couldn't use even the slightest bit of strength. His hand was gone, his body was gone, and all that was left was his head that was still glaring at him. This scene was too horrifying, so horrifying that he almost didn't dare to believe it. It was like he had been struck by lightning. This way of dying was truly a grieving. Goshu was filled with grief and indignation. Finally, everything before his eyes went black and he lost all consciousness. Bang! His head fell to the ground, smashing open a large pit. His bleeding eyes still stared at the position of the vast universe arc, as if he had died with everlasting regret. A king of his generation, a man who had commanded the winds and clouds for many years, his ominous name shaking the world, had actually died at this moment. Even before his death, he hadn't been able to kill the opponent he had regarded as a tiny insect. His ruined bones were buried in the dust. Chapter 821. Lin Sun's body was hot, and his internal injuries were recovering at an amazing speed. This was the miraculous effect of the golden marrow jade liquid he had swallowed before, repairing and nourishing his body. The golden marrow jade liquid was worthy of being one of the 8 treasures of heaven and earth. In a short time, Lin Sun's injuries were healed to a certain extent, and his physical strength was restored a lot. Lin Sun put away the vast universe arc, and with a flash, he began to search in the battlefield. Soon, Lin Sun found a dark silver ring. He probed it with his spiritual awareness, but he was a little disappointed. This was the storage ring left by Go Gue. There were only some fragments of top-grade spiritual marrow, more than 10 kinds of rare spiritual herbs, and some high-grade spiritual materials. In addition, there were 3 jade slips recording secret methods, namely Black Nightmare Spirit Burning Scripture, Green Light Owl Technique, and Minor Calamity Deliverance. For ordinary practitioners, these 3 secret methods were absolutely the top inheritance in the world. They recorded the mysteries of the 5 realms of cultivation and becoming a king. Their value was immeasurable. But for Lin Sun, who had set foot on the top of the Tao, the first 2 secret methods were not of much value because they conflicted with his Tao. Only Minor Calamity Deliverance tempted Lin Sun. This secret method should be regarded as the inheritance of the king's realm. It recorded some secrets about the 9 tribulations of immortality and the mystery of how to survive misfortune and live a long life. Although it was not suitable for Lin Sun to practice now, he could use it to comprehend and figure it out when he set foot on the king's realm and began to seek the way to live a long life. However, Lin Sun was a little disappointed with this little gain. Go Gue, a king who stood on the top of the mountains and began to seek the way to live a long life, carried such shabby things with him, which made Lin Sun speechless. After a while, Lin Sun finally found a huge black dog's leg, and the unwillingness in his heart dissipated a lot. This was the black dog meat of a king. He didn't know how it would taste after being roasted. Before leaving, Lin Sun glanced at the nameless spirit mountain in the distance, with a touch of surprise in his eyes. In the fierce battle before, he clearly saw the golden thunder falling from the sky, which helped him a lot at the critical moment. Finally, Lin Sun bowed silently, cupped his fists, and turned away. It wasn't long before a graceful figure of a woman appeared at the peak of a nameless spirit mountain. She wore golden clothes, and her entire body was enveloped in the glow of the Grand Tao, causing her to seem like a peerlessly gorgeous god. There was a young boy with delicate features, red lips, and white teeth standing by the woman's side. His eyes were brilliant, and they were filled with intelligence. "Mother, why did you help that bastard just now?" The little boy was very angry and gnashed his teeth. "That bastard stole my gold marrow jade nectar and even spanked my butt. He's too shameless and despicable." Looking at the direction where Lin Sun left, the woman said after a while, "Child, do you remember who the enemy of our clan is? The Golden Crow tribe." The little boy answered without hesitation, "That's right." The woman nodded. "So, you have to remember that youth just now." The little boy was stunned. Could he be a descendant of the Golden Crow race? The woman shook her head, and a mysterious arc appeared on the corners of her mouth. "No, he's just like us. One day, he'll surely go to war with the Sun Crow clan. Could it be that he has enmity with the Golden Crow clan? No, perhaps there is no enmity between us now, but it's hard to say in the future." "Mother, why is that?" "Because the bow in his hand has killed more than one sage of the Golden Crow tribe in ancient times, and the arrow in his hand is one of the 9 divine arrows of the Dei tribe, which has also been stained with the blood of many strong practitioners of the Golden Crow tribe." The woman said indifferently, "This is a predestined cause and effect. Perhaps the youth has no enmity with the Golden Crow tribe, but from the moment he got the pair of bows and arrows, he has been entangled with this cause and effect. Sooner or later, he'll have to face this cause and effect." "Mother, I don't understand." "Lina, you're still young. You'll understand it sooner or later. You must remember that you're a descendant of the single-horned Golden Eyes tribe. Your father was killed by the Golden Crow tribe. You can't forget this hatred no matter what. The little boy nodded, and a touch of firmness appeared on his handsome face. I understand. In his heart, he said to himself, no matter what, when I grow up, I'm going to give that bastard a good beating. He's the first person that dared to spank me, Tai Lin, on the butt. I absolutely can't tolerate such a humiliation. In the future, the little boy would be called the Tai Lin Emperor. He spent his entire life fighting in the 9 heavens and 10 earths, and his divine power dominated the universe. He was worshipped by countless practitioners in the world. But no one knew that when the Tai Lin Emperor was young, he had been unceremoniously hit on the butt, which he had held a grudge for the rest of his life and regarded as a stain on his life. Of course, this was a matter for the future. Lord Qi was dead. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Go Su Xing and the others appeared in this area. When they confirmed that Go Qi was no longer in this world, they were completely dumbfounded, as if they had been struck by lightning. Send the news back to the clan. After a long time, Go Su Xing said with a livid expression. He knew that he could no longer hide it. The death of a king was a heavy blow to the Black Sea Tengu tribe, which had forces all over the ancient Desolation realm. It was no less than a bolt from the blue. No matter how brilliant Go Su Xing was among the younger generation, no matter how unwilling he did not have the courage to hide such a grievous news. 2 half-step king warriors were killed. More than half of his elite subordinates were killed. Now, even Go Qi was killed, but his opponent was still alive. This operation could be said to be a complete failure, a complete mess. Go Su Xing knew clearly that if he returned to the clan now, what awaited him would definitely be the anger and punishment of those high-level figures. I must kill you. I must. Go Su Xing murmured in his heart, and Lin Sun's figure emerged in his mind. He had never been so resentful as at this moment. The clouds were steaming, the ancient forest was green, and the mountains in the distance were undulating. It was as magnificent as a painting. Lin Sun walked it alone. During the day, he observed the landscape of the mountains and rivers, probed the acupoints, and tried to figure out the mystery of the wind-mocking eyes. At night, he meditated quietly, absorbing the essence of heaven and earth and refining his body. Along the way, he did not encounter any danger, and the enemies seemed to retreat and did not appear again. A few days later, on the top of a mountain steaming with purple mist, Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and the mist all over the mountain was blown away, revealing the true appearance of the mountain. Clatter, he stretched out his hand, and the mountain shook under the control of his terrible palm power. Before long, a mineral vein like a divine rainbow was extracted out. The vein was like a snake, sparkling and resplendent as it flowed with resplendent purple light, overflowing and magnificent. Purple treasure copper. It was a kind of high-grade spiritual material, which was very expensive. A thumb-sized piece could be exchanged for 30 pieces of low-grade spiritual marrow in the market. But the purple treasure copper spiritual vein in front of him weighed tens of thousands of kilograms, like a thick purple python. Lin Sun put it into the storage ring, and then turned around and floated away. In the past few days, with the magical effect of the wind-mocking eyes, he found a lot of treasures along the way, breeding all kinds of spiritual veins and mineral resources. For example, Tai-Bai pure gold, green demon pattern iron, red smoke jade, and other mineral veins. There were also some scattered spiritual veins, breeding high-grade spiritual crystals, spiritual marrow, and other treasures. The quality of these treasures varied, but the number was relatively small. With the help of wind-mocking eyes, Lin Sun even found some spiritual mountains and rivers which could be called blessed places. In addition to gains, there were also dangers. Some treasured places which seemed to be borne by heaven and earth actually hid great dangers. Lin Sun had almost been in danger more than once. For example, yesterday, in front of a dark golden mountain full of treasure light and incomparably rich spiritual qi, Lin Sun inferred that there should be a star gold jade mine hidden here. But when he excavated it, a horrible earth evil blood qi gushed out of the vein under the mountain and rose to the sky. In just a moment, All the vegetation, rocks, and mountains within a radius of 100 miles were corroded and annihilated, turning into ashes. All the vitality was extinguished. If Lin Sun hadn't dodged in time, he would have been killed. The earth evil blood chi, which was the most terrible and strange power in the world, had unimaginable corrosive power. Even if it was a Tao Insight Realm cultivator, he or she would immediately die without a trace of it. Lin Sun had encountered such an encounter several times along the way. A fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. He learned a lot from it, and his understanding and comprehension of the wind-mocking eyes became deeper and deeper. Half a month later, late at night, the stars were shining brightly in the night sky. The mountains were silent, and only the whistling mountain wind could be heard between heaven and earth. Halfway up the mountain, under a vigorous willow tree, Lin Sun was meditating with a raging bonfire. His handsome face flickered in the light of the fire. His aura was restrained, lonely, and soundless, and he was like a rock that remained unmoving. A little squirrel climbed up the willow tree and looked at Lin Sun curiously in the branches. After hesitating for a long time, it jumped down carefully and swept Lin Sun's face with its soft and fluffy tail. Seeing that Lin Sun still didn't move, it jumped on Lin Sun's shoulder happily, as if it had found an interesting toy. Finally, the little squirrel got tired of playing. It buried its fluffy head in Lin Sun's arms and lay on its back with its little paws curled up, snoring loudly. Silently, a pair of green eyes appeared in the darkness in the distance. It was a strong and slender blood leopard. It approached quietly like a vigilant hunter, staring at Lin Sun and the little squirrel with its green eyes. It was getting closer. The little squirrel was still sleeping soundly with its soft belly rising and falling. It didn't notice the approaching danger at all. Lin Sun, who was as still as a rock, opened his eyes at this moment. At that moment, two flashes of lightning seemed to flash in the darkness. Plop! The blood leopard crawled on the ground, shivering. It felt great fear and hissed in sorrow. Lin Sun's eyes were clear, and there was a touch of ethereal aura between his eyebrows. He looked at the blood leopard quietly, and for a moment, many wonderful perceptions emerged in his heart. This was a blood leopard that had been starving for many days. At the same time, it was also the mother of a group of cubs. It longed for food because its cubs were starving and dying. But now, it felt fear and despair. It was very unwilling because it wasn't afraid of death, but it was worried that its cubs wouldn't survive after it died. This was the emotion of the blood leopard, but Lin Sun completely grasped it and understood it in an instant. This was the magical effect of Cheonyo's heart, the 9th transformation of 9 changes of Calamity Dragon. Chapter 822. Cheonyo, an ancient psychic beast, had the heart of 9 orifices, which could distinguish the language of insects and plants. Its heart was connected with all things, and it had an unfathomable talent. It was said that this beast could even communicate with the great way of heaven and earth. The inheritance of Cheonyo's heart was a kind of strange, secret method for comprehending all things in the world and integrating oneself with nature. After practicing this secret method, one's state of mind would be in harmony with all things in the world, and one's mind would be in harmony with heaven and earth, so that practitioners could naturally perceive the traces of the Great Way. This was extremely amazing. Enlightenment. Even the great practitioners of reincarnation developing realm could not necessarily comprehend and control the power of Tao. After all, the Great Way was nameless, shapeless, and formless. It was too ethereal and obscure. There might not even be one in 1,000 reincarnation development realm cultivators who could comprehend its mystery and essence. It could be said to be one in 1,000, as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. If one had Cheonyo's heart, he could perceive the traces of the Great Way more naturally. This obviously showed how shocking and miraculous this secret technique was. God has the virtue of cherishing life. It's fate that you can meet me at this time. This is for you. Lin Sun's mind was clear and clear. He took out a huge black dog leg and threw it to the blood leopard. Go! He waved his hand. The numerous stars in the sky were dazzling, and they scattered down chilly light that bathed his tall and handsome figure within, causing him to seem otherworldly. The blood leopard was obviously confused, and then made a low whimper. As if it had intelligence, it knelt on the ground and bowed to Lin Sun. Then it took the huge black dog leg in its mouth, turned around, and disappeared into the night. The little squirrel was still sleeping, with its fluffy and smooth tail covering its body. It was fluffy, and it made a snoring sound through its nose. Lin Sun was trying to figure out and comprehend the essence of Cheonyo's heart. A few days ago, when he finally understood all the mysteries of the wind-mocking eyes, he began to touch the inheritance mystery of the last transformation of the 9 transformations of the Calamity Dragon. It was also tonight that he managed to peek into the door of this wondrous technique and achieve some success. I didn't expect this secret method to be so incredible. With it, I can solve the obstacle on my enlightenment. Lin Sun's black eyes were clear, shining in the starlight. Now he was about to break through to reincarnation developing realm, and that was the last gap to be filled, which was the state of Tao. The change of seasons, the rise and fall of day and night, the rise and fall of tides. These were the phenomena of all things. Everything in the world had an image, and the image was an illusion. It was the Tao, and when it was reflected in the world, it was the rhythm of the Tao. It deduced the order and change of all phenomena in the world, and it went round and round again. This was the Taoist rhyme, the blazing and wanton traces of fire, the endless vitality of wood, the incomparably swift and fierce traces of metal. All of these traces formed the aura of the Tao, and they represented the aura of the Tao. They fused with the heavens, the earth, and they filled the world. Because it was marvelous and formless, it was indescribable. Long before stepping into the Tao insight realm, Lin Sun had comprehended and mastered the Tao of water. Until now, he was still stuck at the level of Tao insight and couldn't break through to the Tao insight realm. Originally, Lin Sun was still thinking about how to solve this obstacle, but now with the Cheonyo's heart, he undoubtedly saw hope. When I master the water Tao, I don't have to suppress my realm and prepare to break through to reincarnation developing realm. Lin Sun murmured in his heart, full of expectation. He had been stuck in Tao insight realm for too long. Whoosh! Suddenly, a figure flashed in the distance. The blood leopard came back with a rusty copper piece in its mouth. Lin Sun was stunned. The blood leopard carefully put the copper piece on the ground and turned away. Obviously, this was a kind of repayment from it. Lin Sun was moved and thought, sheep have the heart to feed, and crows have the righteousness to feed themselves. I didn't expect that the blood leopard would come to repay me. He picked up the rusty piece of copper and saw that it was heavy. It was about the size of a palm and was covered with a layer of dark green rust. It seemed to be a fragment of some treasure. Lin Sun removed the rust with his palm, revealing the original appearance of the copper piece. Immediately, Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank. The copper piece looked very ordinary, but there was a picture engraved on it. An old man in Taoist robe was riding on the back of a green ox in a leisurely manner, looking up at the sky. The picture was a little dim and blurred, as if it had been eroded by countless years. But when Lin Sun looked at it, he felt a kind of supreme pressure. The pressure was vast and terrifying. For a moment, Lin Sun felt that the old man riding the green ox seemed to come to life and looked at him with a pair of eyes. What kind of eyes were those? They were as deep as the universe, reflecting the ups and downs of the sun and moon and the change of time. The mystery of the Tao of heaven seemed to emerge in them. Hiss! Lin Sun gasped in shock. He was so shocked that he almost knelt down in awe. It was so incredible. But when he looked carefully again, the vision just now seemed to evaporate. No matter how Lin Sun tried, he couldn't find it. Lin Sun was stunned. How could the picture of a Taoist riding on an ox be imprinted on a copper piece? This thing must have a great origin. When Lin Sun got up, the sleeping squirrel suddenly woke up. With a scream, it turned over and ran away. Before long, Lin Sun came to a cave on the cliff. A blood leopard was lying in it, surrounded by 5 or 6 blood leopard cubs. Lin Sun stood outside the cave and scanned it carefully with his spiritual awareness, trying to find some clues about the copper piece. But he got nothing in the end. The blood leopard was awakened. It seemed to be a little surprised to see Lin Sun. It made a low hissing sound as if it was asking Lin Sun why he came. Lin Sun tried to communicate with the blood leopard by running the secret method of Chionyo's heart. Suddenly, a picture emerged in his mind. In a wilderness, the blood leopard was looking for food, but it found a skeleton in the cave. The skeleton was in a meditative posture. It should be a cultivator who had passed away in meditation for many years. The body was covered with dust. The blood leopard stepped forward and touched it gently. The skeleton suddenly turned into powder, leaving only a rusty copper piece on the ground. The image disappeared at this point. It turns out that a cultivator passed away in meditation here and left this copper piece. Lin Sun was lost in thought. Suddenly, the blood leopard got up and rushed down to the depths of the cliff. After a long time, it returned with a decaying bone scroll in its mouth. It stepped forward and placed it at Lin Sun's feet. Crack! When Lin Sun picked up the bone scroll, the surface of the scroll was cracked, as if it was about to shatter and be annihilated. Lin Sun hurriedly probed it with his spiritual awareness. Immediately, he saw a line of unique Taoist runes in ancient times. I wanted to imitate the sages and cross the starry sky to go to the ruins of wonders. However, this road has been cut off. I have been searching for 48,000 years, but only left the relics of the sages. I have no chance to see the path of the sages. Lin Sun was stunned. Crack! In his hand, the decayed bone scroll completely turned into powder and disappeared in the world. But Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of it. In his mind, he seemed to have seen the scene of an exceedingly powerful cultivator in the primeval times obtaining a relic left behind by chance. Thus, the cultivator intended to imitate the actions of the saints and traverse the starry sky to explore the ruins of profundity. But he searched bitterly for 48,000 years, yet he was unable to find the path to the ruins of wonders. In the end, he passed away in regret and returned to the dust, leaving only this copper piece behind. Perhaps this is the so-called relic of the sages. That cultivator thought it was related to the ruins of wonders on the other side of the starry sky, so he had the intention to imitate the sages and head to the ruins of wonders to take a look. Lin Sun fell into deep thought as he rubbed the copper piece branded with the painting of a Taoist riding an ox, and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He had been searching for 48,000 years, yet he had no chance to see it in the end, and he passed away with regret. The ruins of wonders deserved to be one of the 4 great ancient ruins of ways. Lin Sun had once entered the ultimate and obtained a mysterious Taoist hymn and a flying immortal token related to the ruins of Kunlun, so he naturally knew how mysterious the 4 great ancient ruins of ways were. But he'd never imagined that this copper piece left behind by the ancient sages would actually be related to the ruins of wonders. After a long time, Lin Sun put away the painting of a Taoist riding an ox, and then he nodded to the blood leopard before turning around and leaving swiftly. 3 days later, Lin Sun appeared before a majestic and lofty mountain that seemed like a coiled tiger. Through the observation of the wind-mocking eyes, he instantly determined that a rich vein of spiritual essence was hidden within this mountain. However, when he was just about to dig, he noticed that some people had arrived here a long time ago, and they were digging in the mountain. It was a group of cultivators that were moving through a mine at the waist of the mountain. Besides that, there was a gorgeous carriage parked outside the mine, and there were elite cultivators guarding it nearby. Obviously, it was definitely a figure of extraordinary status within the carriage. Lin Sun had no intention to fight for the vein with others when he saw this, and he was about to leave. However, a gentle voice resounded at this moment. "Young master, have you come for this vein as well?" As she spoke, the curtain of the carriage was pulled open to reveal the face of a beauty. Her black brows were curved, her red lips were moist, and her pearly teeth were crystalline. There was a wisp of a smile on the corners of her mouth, and her bearing was graceful like an orchid as she raised her eyes to look at Lin Sun. Instantly, the guards near the carriage were alarmed. Only now did they notice Lin Sun's existence, and all of them looked over in unison with vigilant expressions. This woman's perception is really sharp. She's still able to notice my existence from so far away. She ought to have cultivated some sort of secret technique of the soul. Lin Sun was slightly surprised in his heart, and then he shook his head to indicate that he was just passing by before he turned around and left. How audacious! My big sister is asking you a question. Who allowed you to leave? Could it be that you have ulterior motives? A rather handsome young man around the age of 15 or 16 by the side of the carriage instantly shouted out loudly. The elite guards all revealed hostile expressions. This vein contained shockingly valuable spiritual essence, and it had just been discovered by them a few days ago. Since they were excavating it, they were naturally worried that others would covet it and seize it. Lin Sun's sudden appearance caused them to have no choice but to suspect that he might be a spy sent by some power to obtain information. Chapter 823. Lin Sun turned around with a smile on his lips. Looking at the handsome boy who scolded him, he said indifferently, "Little guy, be careful of your careless talk." The handsome boy was furious. He pointed at Lin Sun and said, "Careless talk? How dare you threaten me? Tell me, who sent you here? If you don't tell me the truth, don't even think about leaving today." Clang, clang, clang. Near the handsome boy, a group of guards drew out their weapons and stared at Lin Sun coldly, ready to attack. A trace of coldness flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. He knew that the boy misunderstood him. But even if it was a misunderstanding, he shouldn't be so overbearing, right? "If I stay, can you bear the consequences?" Lin Sun said casually. The profound meaning of Puzeo's roar ran naturally, making his voice carry a terrible deterrent force. The handsome boy trembled all over as if he was struck by lightning. He staggered and fell to the ground, trembling all over. The guards were all shocked and restless. They couldn't believe that this scene was so weird that their young master was suppressed by Lin Sun's words. "How dare you sneak attack?" The handsome boy screamed angrily. "What are you waiting for? Go and kill this damn bastard." Lin Sun frowned. If it were other practitioners, they would be vigilant and cautious after suffering such a blow and dare not be presumptuous to him again. But this boy was different. Obviously, he was a spoiled guy who used to be domineering and arrogant and had never suffered any losses. "Shut up." Seeing that a fight was about to break out, the gentle woman who came out of the chariot finally couldn't help scolding the handsome boy beside her. "Little Tion, have you had enough? It's too presumptuous to fight and kill without asking the right and wrong." When the woman was silent, she was skilled and graceful, but once she got angry, she carried a unique majesty, which made the handsome boy's face change constantly. Finally, he restrained himself and said nothing. At the same time, the woman looked at Lin Sun and apologized. "My younger brother is spoiled so much that he offended you. Please forgive him." Lin Sun replied with a faint smile. "Since you knew that he had such a bad temper, you didn't stop him before. Do you also want to test my temper?" The woman's expression became increasingly apologetic. "So, the young master has already seen through it. This is indeed my fault. If young master is unhappy, I am willing to compensate young master with sincerity." She was very frank, without refutation or concealment, which surprised Lin Sun. He thought in his heart that this woman was not simple. "No need. Since it's a misunderstanding, I won't argue with a little kid. Goodbye." Lin Sun waved his hand casually and turned around to leave. The woman was a little anxious and hurriedly asked, "May I ask for young master's name?" Lin Sun said, "We met by chance." "Why do you ask?" The woman explained, "Young master, please don't misunderstand. I have offended you just now. I just want to do my best to make up for my mistake. Otherwise, I will feel very uneasy." Lin Sun sighed in his heart, feeling a little dispirited. This woman seemed to be sincere and gentle, but in fact, there was a hidden mystery behind it. After all, she just wanted to confirm Lin Sun's identity, so as to infer the purpose of his coming here. In other words, she still suspected that Lin Sun suddenly appeared in front of this mountain where the spiritual vein was hidden for another purpose. Lin Sun had seen all kinds of storms and waves since he started his cultivation. He could see through her at a glance without guessing. If you really want to make up for it, you can dig your spiritual mine with peace of mind. I don't care about such little wealth. After saying this, Lin Sun no longer hesitated and floated away. The woman's expression stagnated, and her pretty face was a little hot. This guy seemed to have seen through her mind long ago. She seemed to be lost in thought. She acutely realized that this youth was very unusual, and he was different from all the outstanding geniuses she'd seen in the past. Young master, my name is Yu Xuejiao from Snow Maple City. If we are fated to meet in the future, I will make up for it and repay you. She spoke in a clear voice. Her voice spread very far, but unfortunately, Lin Sun had already walked far away, so she didn't know whether he heard it or not. Sister, with your identity, why do you have to be so respectful to that guy? I think that guy is obviously a spy with bad intentions. The handsome young man was very dissatisfied. He was called Yu Xuetian, and he was Yu Xuejiao's younger brother. The other guard were also very puzzled. Their Yu family was the #1 power in Snow Maple City. Within the surrounding 10,000 miles, their name was awe-inspiring. As the most outstanding woman of the Yu family's younger generation, Yu Xuejiao's name was definitely known far and wide within Snow Maple City. Her status was extraordinary, but now she was repeatedly apologizing and giving way to an unfamiliar youth, and this seemed to be too unusual. Yu Xuejiao was stunned for a while, and then she sighed lightly. What do you know? If he really wanted to rob the spiritual vein here, none of us could stop him. She had cultivated the secret skill of the soul since she was young, and her perception was extremely strong. From the first time she saw Lin Sun, she knew that this young man was extremely extraordinary, like a deep abyss, unfathomable. We have been out for almost a month. It's time to go back to the city. Yu Xuejiao suddenly made a decision. It seemed very abrupt, causing the others to be startled. Go back to Snow Maple City? 2 hours later, as far as the eye could see, the terrain had become flat and level. In the wilderness, the mountains gradually disappeared in the horizon, and the outline of a huge city could be seen in the distance. After arriving here, Lin Sun slowed down and walked towards the city. From the time he left Yin capital until now, he had been trekking in the wilderness for more than a month. Whether it was day or night, he was always accompanied by fierce birds and beasts, wandering in the deep mountains and forests. According to Lin Sun's estimation, he had traveled at least hundreds of thousands of miles. On the way, besides being chased by the strong practitioners of the Black Demon Tengu tribe, he also encountered many dangers. After all, the vast mountains were as primitive as the prehistoric times, with fierce beasts everywhere, exotic birds flying in the sky, and poisonous insects everywhere, making the road of cultivation difficult. It was impossible for ordinary people to travel such a long way. Even ordinary practitioners didn't dare to travel alone in the vast mountains like Lin Sun. Now that he finally saw a city, Lin Sun was also refreshed. He needed to inquire and confirm the way to Phoenix Perch Province. At the same time, he also needed to exchange for some necessary items, such as the spiritual marrow needed for cultivation and the mid-rank congealing jade to feed the spirit-eating bugs. Moreover, he was able to find out about the major events that had occurred in the Great West Dimension during this period of time in the city. After breaking out of the Endless Mountains, there were not so many fierce birds and beasts. On the way, Lin Sun saw some people one after another. Most of them were merchants who went in and out of the primitive forests to dig and collect spiritual medicines and herbs. They also bought sundries, such as animal skins from some mountain tribes. Although the journey was dangerous, they could make a lot of profit. From their words, Lin Sun already knew that the city in the distance was called Snow Maple City, located in the border area of Cloud Jade Province. Cloud Jade Province was a famous place in the West Hung Territory. The reason was that there was an ancient orthodoxy that had a great influence in the entire West Hung Territory. Feather Sword Sect. This sect claimed to have 8,000 disciples and 3,000 caves. Its foundation was extremely strong and terrifying. The most eye-catching thing was that there were 6 Sword Kings and 1 half-step Sword Saint in the Feather Sword sect. Sword King. This was the name given to the sword cultivators who had stepped into the life and death realm. Half-step Sword Saint was even more abnormal. They were terrifying figures who had passed through the 9 tribulations and were only a step away from becoming a saint. A single Feather Sword sect had 6 Sword Kings and 1 half-step Sword Saint, so it was easy to imagine how powerful it was. Because of this, the Feather Sword sect was reputed to be one of the holy lands of cultivation in the West Hung territory, and it was a first-rate power among the ancient orthodoxies. In terms of status, it was only slightly inferior to the number 1 orthodoxy of the West Hung territory, the Profound Sword School. After all, the Profound Sword House had a true saint residing within it, and merely this alone was sufficient to display how extraordinary its resources and reserves were. Whoosh! Suddenly, a terrifying fluctuation came from the sky. A divine bird that was pure white like snow soared through the sky, carrying over 10 young men and women. This place was already very close to the enormous city gate of Snow Maple City, and there were many figures coming and going on the road. At this moment, all of them were alarmed and couldn't help but raise their heads to look. After that, an uproar resounded. That's a phoenix blood snow wand that possesses the bloodline of an ancient phoenix. What a terrifying aura. It probably possesses the might of a half-step king. Phoenix blood snow wand, I know. They're the disciples of the Feather Sword sect. The scene seemed to be extremely clamorous, and many people couldn't conceal their shock and fervor. The Feather Sword sect was the supreme, holy land of cultivation in the Cloud Jade Prefecture. Yet now, a phoenix blood snow wand had descended from the sky, and it carried over 10 young disciples of the Ascension Sword sect to appear in Snow Maple City. How could this not cause everyone to be shocked and shocked? Along with their shock, everyone couldn't help but be curious. Why did these disciples of the Feather Sword sect come to Snow Maple City? At this moment, Lin Sun had just arrived before the city gate and was about to enter when he saw this scene, and his gaze was drawn over. Swoosh! The phoenix blood snow wand descended, causing violent winds to sweep the ground and dust to rise into the air. Over 10 disciples of the Feather Sword sect floated down to the ground. All of them were handsome and beautiful, and all of them were like immortals that had descended to the mortal world. All of them could be said to be dragons and phoenixes amongst men, and they each had their own elegant bearing, especially the man in the lead. He wore feathered clothes and a starry rainbow crown. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and he had a heroic bearing and was in high spirits. His gaze was like lightning, his hair was black like ink, and his posture was ramrod straight like a sword. As he stood there casually, he was simply like a sword immortal of legend, and he possessed a peerless bearing. My God, that wouldn't be Zhuo Kuanglan, right? Someone cried out in surprise, and it caused a great commotion. The nearby cultivators gasped without end. Zhuo Kuanglan. He was an outstanding talent of the Feather Sword sect's younger generation, and he was ranked among the 5 great true disciples of the Feather Sword sect's inner court. He was rather famous in the entire Westlake region, and he was like a peerlessly dazzling star in the younger generation that radiated boundless light. Even Lin Sun's eyes couldn't help but narrow when he saw this person's bearing. He realized how terrifying this person was, and there was a fierce sword intent contained within him that was extremely terrifying. But in next to no time, Lin Sun's gaze was quickly attracted by a man beside Zhuo Kuanglan. How could it be him? Lin Sun's heart shook when he recognized the man's identity, and he felt slight disbelief. Never had he imagined that he would actually encounter this person here. Chapter 8:24. The man wore a green robe and a jade belt. His hair was coiled into a bun, and he had a handsome face. He carried a blue ancient sword on his back and looked aloof. Young Sword King, Shai Yutong. When Lin Sun was a weak teenager of 13 or 14 years old, he had met Shai Yutong in the ancient forest outside Feiyun village. At that time, Lin Sun was only in the martial realm, while Shai Yutong had already reached the sea spirit realm and could fly on his sword like an immortal. Later, Lin Sun met Lu Qingyan for the first time in Mist City, southwest province of the Empire, and he met Shai Yutong again. But at that time, Shai Yutong put his sword 1 inch away from Lin Sun's throat, threatening him to let go of a defeated playboy in an indisputable manner. Lin Sun still remembered what Shai Yutong had said at that time. "Little ant, if you overestimate yourself, you are bound to get yourself killed." That was the first time that Lin Sun had been threatened like this. He would never forget the feeling in his life. But not long after Lin Sun entered the Forbidden City, Shai Yutong, the young Sword King, had left for the ancient desolation for cultivation. Since then, Lin Sun hadn't heard any news about him. But he didn't expect to see this man again in front of Snow Maple City on the border of Yunyazu in the Westing Territory. It seems that after coming to the ancient desolation, he has entered the Feather Sword sect to cultivate, and he is valued by the sect. Lin Sun realized that Shai Yutong's status in the Feather Sword sect would not be low since he could accompany Zhuo Kuanglan, one of the 5 inherited disciples of the Feather Sword sect. Lin Sun didn't like Shai Yutong, nor did he hate him. Although he was threatened by Shai Yutong with a sword in his throat, Shai Yutong had saved him by accident before. Therefore, as far as Lin Sun was concerned, he and Shai Yutong were even, and no one owed the other anything. Of course, Lin Sun had his own pride and dignity. Although he would not retaliate against Shai Yutong, he would not take the initiative to cross paths with Shai Yutong. Although for the people of the ancient Desolation Realm, the two of them were old friends from the same place, old friends couldn't just ignore what had happened in the past and bury the hatchet. However, when Lin Sun was about to turn around and leave, Shai Yutong also found him and said in surprise, "You also came to the ancient Desolation Realm?" Lin Sun answered with a calm look. Shai Yutong frowned. It had only been a few years since he last saw Lin Sun. He was surprised to find that Lin Sun had reached the peak of Tao Insight Realm. "Have you joined a sect?" Shai Yutong asked. He didn't take Lin Sun seriously at that time. It was also when he was in the Forbidden City that he learned that Lin Sun had made a name for himself. However, he didn't expect that this young man, who came from a small village at the border of Xiao Empire, had the ability to cultivate in the ancient Desolation Realm in just a few years. This made him feel surprised and curious. In Xiao Empire, not everyone could enter the ancient Desolation Realm at will. Only the most powerful forces in the world had the ability to send their disciples to this vast and boundless holy land of cultivation. "No." Lin shook his head. "Oh." Shai Yutong felt relieved. It was already a great fortune for a young man with no background and no identity to cultivate in the ancient Desolation Realm. How could he join an ancient orthodoxy to cultivate? "Junior brother Xie, is this the friend you made in the mortal world?" Suddenly, Zhuo Kuanglan spoke. He was wearing a wide sleeves and a wide belt. His figure was as straight as a sword, with a soaring spirit. As soon as he spoke, he became the focus of all the people present. "We're not friends, just acquaintances," Shai Yutong said casually. "Oh." Zhuo Kuanglan withdrew his gaze. He didn't exchange greetings with Lin Sun. There was a sense of arrogance in his reserved manner. The mortal world, the descendants of Yuhua, sword sect nearby, were all stunned, and then they showed disapproval on their faces. They more or less despised and disdained Lin Sun. Originally, they were quite curious about Lin Sun when they saw Shai Yutong talking with Lin Sun, thinking that he was a disciple of an ancient sect. But when they learned that Lin Sun was a young man from the barren mortal world and had no sect, they immediately lost interest. "Junior brother Xie, business is urgent. We can't waste any more time," Zhuo Kuanglan said casually. Shai Yutong obviously didn't want to introduce Lin Sun to others. He nodded and said, "Whatever you say, senior brother Zhuo. Then let's go." They immediately walked into the city gate. From beginning to end, they didn't look at Lin Sun. For them, a young man from the mortal world like Lin Sun was indeed no different from a passerby and didn't deserve their attention. Only Shai Yutong squinted at Lin Sun before he left and said calmly, "If you encounter any trouble, you can come to me. But I'll help you if I can. If I can't, don't hold too much hope." After saying that, he left in a hurry. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed, and then he smiled. When Shai Yutong said these words, there was a unique sense of superiority, as if he was giving alms. Obviously, he didn't mean it. Lin Sun didn't expect that he would be despised and ignored by a group of descendants from Feathersword Sect before he entered Snow Maple City. And even Shai Yutong showed a high and mighty attitude, which made Lin Sun feel ridiculous and funny. Shaking his head, he quickly threw this small incident to the back of his mind and strolled into Snow Maple City's grand, tall, and ancient city gate. Not long after Lin Sun left, a gorgeous chariot surrounded by a group of practitioners came from a distance. It was Yu Xuejiao and Yu Xuetian sitting in the chariot. "Sister, let's go to the message tree in the center of the city first. We've been away for a month. I don't know what happened in Shihing territory during this period." Yu Xuetian said excitedly. Yu Xuejiao hesitated for a moment. She couldn't bear to let her brother down, so she nodded and said, "Well, let's go and have a look." Message tree. This was a kind of strange, ancient tree, planted by the most well-informed, strong practitioners of Wind Whisperer clan. Whenever the most sensational thing happened, the strong practitioners of Wind Whisperer clan would hang the news they had inquired on the tree and condense it into leaves for people to browse and watch. The leaves of the message tree were also quite wonderful. They could evolve into words and pictures, vividly reproducing the real scenes of some news. Some very secret news could also be found on the message tree, but it was necessary to take out some spiritual marrow and feed these leaves so that the content of the news could be seen immediately. Because of this, the message tree was also known as the money tree of Wind Whisperer clan. In the center of Snow Maple City, a towering, ancient, and vigorous message tree was rooted here. Its branches extended like a dragon, and it was covered with dense leaves. The leaves were as white as ice and snow, as big as a cattail leaf fan, shining. There were all kinds of news inquired by the strong practitioners of Wind Whisperer clan in them. When Yu Xuejiao and Yu Xuetian arrived, they were surprised to find that this place was unusually lively. Figures that were like a tide surrounded the message tree. There are so many people. Something big must have happened. Yu Xuetian shouted excitedly. He stood up and hurriedly jumped off the chariot and squeezed into the crowd. Little brother's character is still too rash. Yu Xuejiao shook her head, and then she also stood up and walked down the chariot. Yu Xuejiao clearly remembered that unless something extremely sensational happened, the vicinity of the message tree would not attract the attention of so many practitioners. Could it be that something extremely sensational really happened during this period of time? Yu Xuejiao couldn't help but be curious. At this moment, Yu Xuetian, who had already squeezed into the front of the crowd, suddenly exclaimed, "Sister, quickly come and see." Yu Xuejiao's heart shook. Under the escort of a group of guards, she smoothly arrived in front of the message tree and met up with Yu Xuetian. When her gaze looked at the most conspicuous position of the message tree, her body stiffened, and her expression changed slightly. Chapter 825. All the cultivators knew that there was rarely any news hanging on the main trunk of the message tree. But once the news was hung in this area, it would definitely mean that something big that could shake the entire Westwind region had happened. Now, there was a leaf that was the size of a cattail leaf that was as white as snow condensed on the main trunk of the ancient message tree. The leaf glowed and transformed into a light screen. On the screen of light, there was an incomparably shocking battle taking place. It was a battle between a young man and a young woman. The man was like a young demon god. His black eyes were like lightning, and his body was covered in a bright light. His figure moved through the sky, and he was arrogant and overbearing. The woman wore a silver mask. Her figure was graceful like a celestial, but her attack was equally shocking. She released a terrifying sword chi that was peerlessly sharp, and it could slash through the 9 heavens. The light screen was slightly trembling and blurry, but it didn't affect the attention of the cultivators present. They were shocked, and their minds were attracted by the battle. At the same time, an aged voice sounded on the light screen, and it was introducing the battle. This is an unprecedented battle that took place in Fire Spirit Province's Yin capital a month ago. At that time, it caused a stir in the entire Fire Spirit Province. When our Wind Whisper clan received the news, we started to inquire about all the details of the battle as soon as possible. Unfortunately, up until now, we can only confirm that the young man who is like a demon god is called Lin's son, and he once appeared in an inn in Yin capital. It said that he has a close relationship with Xia Xiaochong, the successor of Star Vault Taoist sect, and Feng Linhan, the successor of Baji Saber Nunnery. However, our Wind Whisper clan spent many days investigating Lin Sun's background, but we couldn't find out anything. But we can confirm that this young man can be called a peerless figure among all the young talents in the Westwind region. Lin Sun? This name was too unfamiliar, and it made all the cultivators present feel puzzled. When did such a peerless talent appear in the Fire Spirit Province? On the other hand, Yu Xuejiao's heart trembled. With practically a single glance, she recognized the peerlessly arrogant man in the screen of light like a devil god. Shockingly, it was the young man that she had met a few hours ago. His strength turns out to be much stronger than what I perceived. Yu Xuejiao couldn't calm down. She secretly rejoiced that she didn't use tough means to stop Lin at that time. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. As for Yu Xuejiao's brother, Yu Xuetian, he was dumbfounded. His face was gloomy and filled with disbelief. He also recognized Lin's son. At the thought that he had spoken rudely to provoke and scold Lin's son, he broke out in a cold sweat. He almost caused a great disaster. In a light screen, the old voice still sounded. As for the girl, her origin is even more mysterious and terrifying. Due to some taboo, our Wind Whisperer clan can only keep the secret for her and not leak the news. The crowd was instantly in an uproar. A demon-like young man named Lin Sun was already mysterious enough. Now, even the girl with the silver mask was even more terrible and frightening, so that the Wind Talker clan dared not reveal her identity, which was too shocking. The deadline of the great battle of the world is coming. Many evildoers in the world who have been hiding from the world have begun to show up one after another. I'm afraid that the world will become more and more lively in the future. Among the younger generation, there are bound to be many amazing and extraordinary figures, such as this young man named Lin Sun. No one knew his name before. Many practitioners sighed with emotion. Such an unparalleled battle is really too rare. It can be foreseen that the name of Lin Sun will spread throughout the West-hung world before long. Some people also made predictions. Yes, such an evildoer is absolutely not inferior to the 5 inherited disciples of our Feather Sword sect in the Cloud Dream Province. His name is also destined to be known all over the world. Hearing the sighs and judgments of the practitioners nearby, Yu Xuetian's face became paler and paler, and he felt uneasy. Yu family was just a big force in Snow Maple City. Although it had a strong foundation, how could it compare with a peerless talent who could be famous throughout the West-hung world? Little brother, remember this lesson. Don't act recklessly in the future. Otherwise, you will get yourself killed sooner or later. Yu Xuejiao took the opportunity to remind and teach Yu Xuetian a lesson. Yu Xuetian nodded. He had learned his lesson this time. Make way, all of you. Suddenly, a strong practitioner of the Wind Whisperer clan squeezed through the crowd, looking extremely excited. This time, there is more amazing news, and it is still related to Lin Sun. If you don't make way and delay the time to get the news, don't blame me for not reminding you. Related to Lin Sun? More amazing news? With a clatter, the practitioners in front of the message tree consciously made way for him, urging the strong practitioner of the Wind Whisperer clan to release the news quickly. The strong practitioner of the Wind Whisperer clan was very proud at once. Like a king who was being worshipped by thousands of people, he walked slowly to the message tree with his head held high. Their clan was born to inquire about news and liked to be so focused on. This was a feeling that couldn't be bought with money, and it could greatly satisfy their vanity. Although people nearby wanted to strangle the strong practitioner of the Wind Whisperer clan who deliberately kept them in suspense, they had to wait eagerly before the mystery was solved. In the end, it seemed that the strong practitioner of the Wind Whisperer clan had enough suspense. He hung a snow-white leaf on the main trunk of the message tree. Buzz! The snow-white leaf suddenly seemed to come to life, emitting a blurred and illusory luster, and soon a light curtain was condensed. However, the content of the light curtain was a line of bloody and murderous words. Reward order. Arrest Lin Sun, a young practitioner of the human clan. Anyone who can provide clues about his whereabouts will be rewarded with 1,000 top-grade spiritual marrow. If you can kill him, you only need to bring his head to me, and you will be rewarded with 5,000 top-grade spiritual marrow. This order is effective for a long time. The content was simple and direct, without any exaggeration or exaggeration, but the murderous intent overflowing between the lines made people's scalp numb. When they saw the inscription of the reward order, there was a sudden dead silence, and all the practitioners' faces changed dramatically. The Black Demon Dog Clan. This was a reward order from the Black Demon Dog Clan, and the person they wanted to arrest was Lin Sun, who was like a peerless talent. 1,000 top-grade spiritual marrow was enough to make a top practitioner of the reincarnation developing realm willing to sell his life to buy a king's spiritual treasure. And 5,000 top-grade spiritual marrow. That was even more valuable. What on earth did Lin Sun do that the Black Demon Dog Clan would not hesitate to offer a huge reward to arrest and kill him? This clan is best at tracking and killing enemies. They are fierce and cruel, but now they have to use the reward order to arrest Lin Sun. It seems that they must have suffered a great loss at Lin Sun's hands. After a short while, the silent atmosphere started to resound with discussions. All of them were bewildered and anxious, and their expressions changed when they talked about it. The Black Nightmare Tengu clan was definitely a clan that caused others to loathe, fear, and dread. They were unscrupulous, bloodthirsty, and cruel, and had committed countless atrocities in the entire ancient Desolation region. But now, they actually put up a reward order to arrest a young man who had recently risen like a comet and had the bearing of a peerless talent. This news was undoubtedly too shocking. Why? The Black Demon Dog Clan has gone too far. Our human clan has just had a new peerless talent, and they can't help but want to kill him. Some practitioners spoke indignantly, and the atmosphere immediately ignited. Most practitioners deeply hated the Black Demon Dog Clan, and subconsciously, they all stood on Lin Sun's side. Damn it, these black dog bastards are too arrogant, and they even put up a reward order to arrest Lin Sun in the entire West Hung region. How can they bully people like this? Just you wait, they will suffer retribution sooner or later for being so arrogant and domineering. The practitioners in the field all spoke indignantly. Even Yu Xuejiao and Yu Xuejiu chose to stand on Lin Sun's side at this moment. The Black Sea Tengu clan was simply the public enemy of the cultivation world. They were notorious and had a bad reputation. If it wasn't for the fact that their clan was too powerful and had a terrifying foundation, they would have been annihilated by many orthodoxies. And you Wind Whisper clan, how dare you help the wicked and spread the reward order for those black dog bastards? Have you all become their lackeys? Someone angrily pointed the finger at the expert of the Wind Whisperer clan who spread the news. The latter immediately cried injustice and hurriedly said, "We, the Wind Whisperer clan, have always adhered to the principle of fairness and justice. We only spread the news, and as for grievances and disputes, we have never been involved. I believe you all know this." After a pause, he rolled his eyes and said, "Please don't be angry, everyone. Some of the big shots of the Wind Whisperer clan have carefully analyzed the news and come up with some shocking facts. If you know, you might even feel happy." Happy? Everyone was surprised. Then, they heard an old voice ring out from the ice and snow leaf that had transformed into the bounty notice. It is reported that Lin Sun was once chased by the Black Demon Dog Clan for an unknown reason when he left Yin Capital City. In this pursuit, the Black Demon Dog Clan sent out 2 half-step kings and 1 real king. Apart from that, there were nearly 100 elite top-notch experts under the command of Go Shuxing, a young master of the Black Demon Dog clan who has the title of Thousand Killer. When they heard this, there was a burst of gasps in the field. Some practitioners' hands and feet were cold, and their hearts were in their throats. It was too terrifying. In order to hunt down a peerless young man, they actually sent out a real king. Just this alone was enough to make one feel incomparably stifled and shaken. What's more, the whole force of the pursuit was not just that. The scene became dead silent again, and the air was very oppressive. All the practitioners were listening attentively, lest they miss any detail. This was explosive news that shook the world, and it was sufficient to cause a mighty uproar in the entire West-hung world. According to the news we have inquired, the operation of the Black Demon Dog clan did not go smoothly in this pursuit. Instead, they suffered setbacks. The old voice was analyzing, and the practitioners near the message tree were all listening attentively. Chapter 826. The streets of the city were as bustling as water, and crystal-clear snow maple trees could be seen everywhere. This kind of ancient tree was as white as snow, enshrouded in a pale white mist. As far as the eye could see, thousands of trees were piled up like jadeite, hazy and beautiful. This was the unique scenery of Snow Maple City. It was said that in ancient times, there was a snow maple tree here. On the day it became a saint, its leaves danced like snowflakes, creating a spectacle of snow and ice falling and its leaves covering the sky. Lin Sun, however, was not in the mood to appreciate this beautiful scenery. He put on a cloak and covered his face with the brim of his hat, hurrying through the street. The Wind Whisperer clan is really famous for their big mouth. The news spreads faster than anyone else. Lin Sun thought to himself. He entered the city earlier than you, Xuejiao, and her brother, and arrived at the message tree earlier. He wanted to see what major events were happening recently, but the sensational news was all related to him. If he hadn't been quick enough to cover his face with the cloak, he would have been recognized. The Black Demon Dog clan is really despicable to post a bounty for me. Do they really think I'm a pushover? As soon as Lin Sun thought of the bounty he had just seen, his heart was filled with killing intent. After leaving Yin capital, he had been chased all the way and encountered many dangers. Now, before he could settle the score, the Black Demon Dog clan even issued a bounty for him in the whole Western territory. There was no doubt that the Black Demon Dog clan was trying every means to kill Lin Sun. Well, I'll settle the score with these Black Demon Dogs after I finish my business. Lin Sun took a deep breath and made a decision. Snow Treasure House. This was the largest trading house in Snow Maple City, selling treasures, rare treasures, elixirs, spiritual treasures, which could completely meet the needs of the practitioners in the city. Before long, Lin Sun appeared here and was immediately warmly received by a waitress. I'm going to sell a batch of spiritual materials. Please arrange it for me. Lin Sun went straight to the point. The waitress was stunned and couldn't help asking, "What kind of spiritual materials do you want to sell? How much? If it's too little." Hearing the doubt in the waitress's voice, Lin Sun interrupted, "The spiritual materials are of good quality, and the quantity is enough. I'm just a little worried about whether your Snow Treasure House can afford them." The waitress smiled reservedly and lightly said, "Young noble might not know this, but our Snow Treasure House is the #1 merchant house in the city. In the entire Snow Maple City, there is nothing that our Snow Treasure House can't handle." Lin Sun nodded and said with a smile, "That's great. You can hire an appraiser and prepare sufficient spiritual marrow. We can start the transaction right away." He had to make the best use of his time. Snow Maple City was not a place for him to stay for long. Even the bounty notice had appeared. If his whereabouts were to be exposed, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Seeing that Lin Sun was so confident, the waitress didn't dare to neglect him anymore. She brought him into a quiet, elegant room and then left in a hurry. Not long after, the waitress returned with a man and a woman beside her. "Miss, this is the young master who wants to sell spirit materials," the female attendant introduced in a low voice. However, she was surprised to find that when the young miss saw Lin Sun for the first time, she was shocked and sluggish, as if she had been possessed. Not only the young miss, but also the young master was dumbfounded as if he had seen a ghost. At the same time, Lin Sun was also stunned. It was such a coincidence that it turned out to be this pair of brother and sister. They were Yu Xuejiao and Yu Xuetian. As soon as they returned to Snow Treasure House, they heard someone reporting that a guest wanted to sell a large number of spiritual materials and was worried that Snow Treasure House couldn't handle them all, which made them not know whether to laugh or cry. The Yu family had been running Snow Treasure House for thousands of years, but never had a guest dared to talk big like that. Out of curiosity, they immediately decided to come and see who this guest was and how he dared to talk big like that. In fact, he even suspected that this was a competitor purposely trying to make trouble for him. But they never thought that they would meet Lin Sun here. Thinking of the sensational news they heard in front of the message tree, the sister and brother felt it was unreal. The young prodigy, who was like a demon god, had long since spread like wildfire in Snow Maple City. Why would he appear here? If this news was spread out, would it cause a greater sensation? Even though most of Lin Sun's face was covered by the brim of the hat, Yu Xuejiao still recognized him at a glance. But soon, Yu Xuejiao felt stiff all over. She saw Lin Sun was looking at her. Although his eyes were calm, it made her completely sober up with a chill. She waved the waitress away and closed the door of the quiet room. Then she said, "Child, are you going to sell spiritual materials?" She looked calm, as if she was receiving an ordinary guest. "Sister, didn't you recognize him? He is..." Yu Xuetian couldn't help reminding her. "Little brother, we mistook you for someone else. Don't say anything more. Just stand aside and watch," Yu Xuejiao said casually. Yu Xuetian couldn't understand, but he didn't dare to say more. He stood in the corner and looked at Lin Sun with deep fear and curiosity. A trace of admiration flashed in Lin Sun's eyes. Even he had to admit that Yu Xuejiao was an extremely intelligent woman. There were some things that couldn't be said even though they were well aware of it. It was undoubtedly the best to pretend not to know. Just like at this moment, Yu Xuejiao knew that once the Black Demon Tengu tribe knew that their Yu family had been in contact with Lin Sun, it would inevitably lead to an unpredictable disaster. "If it's too troublesome, I'll just go to another shop," Lin Sun said. Yu Xuejiao was startled, then immediately smiled. "My Snow Treasure Tower is a business. How can we drive our customers away?" Immediately, Lin Sun stopped being polite and waved his sleeves. With a clatter, a complete purple mineral vein swept out like a coiling python, illuminating the room. A complete purple copper vein. Yu Xuetian's eyes lit up and blurted out. At this time, Yu Xuejiao also showed her exquisite treasure appraisal ability. After examining for a moment, she said, "The quality is high, but it still needs to be refined again to be able to extract the real purple profound copper. According to my estimation, this vein is almost equivalent to 80 pieces of high-grade spiritual essence." Lin Sun nodded. "At your price, 80 pieces of upper spiritual marrow was equivalent to 8,000 pieces of middle spiritual marrow. This could definitely be considered a generous offer." Yu Xuejiao smiled slightly. "I'm glad you're satisfied. I'll go prepare the spiritual marrow for you. Don't worry, I still have a lot of spiritual materials to sell." Lin Sun stopped her. Yu Xuejiao was stunned. To be honest, a transaction of 80 pieces of upper spiritual marrow was already a big deal, and it was very rare. She might not encounter such a transaction in 10 days or half a month. But she didn't expect that this was just the beginning of the transaction. Clatter, Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and a red mineral vein with steaming mist swept out. It was only as thick as a thumb, but it was extremely long and coiled into a pile. A complete red smoke jade mine. At a glance, Yu Xuejiao recognized that it was also a kind of high-grade spiritual material, and it was quite rare. It was a precious item, more valuable than the purple copper. Its color is red like burning, and its quality is crystal clear with few impurities. It belongs to the highest grade. According to the market price, it can be exchanged for 120 pieces of upper spiritual marrow. Yu Xuejiao took a deep breath and quoted a price. She didn't have the courage to deliberately lower the price to cheat Lin Sun, a peerless figure who was destined to be famous in the West Hung world. Lin Sun nodded and took out a grand white adamantine vein, a green demon pattern iron vein, a star gold jade vein, and there were over a dozen types of ore veins in a forest, and they filled the entire quiet room. They were of various colors, dazzling and resplendent. They flowed with alluring rays of light, and it seemed especially shocking. This is too much. Yu Xuetian's lips trembled. He was completely dumbfounded and shocked. He was born in the Yu family, the first force in Snow Maple City, and had seen all kinds of spiritual treasures, but he had never seen so many spiritual veins gathered together. Even Yu Xuejiao was in a trance and felt a little strange. She couldn't help but blurt out, "Child, are you also a spiritual celestial master who is proficient in detecting acupoints and pulse?" Spiritual celestial master. They were a kind of noble and transcendent existence. They were proficient in detecting acupoints and pulse, and could deduce the general trend of mountains and rivers and the direction of veins of the earth. They had unfathomable means. In today's world, if any major force wanted to build a blessed place or excavate mineral veins, they would spend a lot of money to invite a spiritual celestial master. Unfortunately, there are too few spiritual celestial masters. They were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns, and they could only be seen in ancient orthodoxies. For example, in the whole Cloud Dream province, there were less than 5 spiritual celestial masters in thousands of cities, and 4 of them were worshipped in Feathersword sect. From this, it could be seen how transcendent and respected the status of spiritual celestial master was. They were no different from spiritual tattoo masters who were proficient in refining weapons. No, Lin Sun shook his head. He also knew about the existence of spiritual celestial master, but he didn't know the secret skills mastered by spiritual celestial master. The spiritual mineral veins he was selling this time were all found in the vast mountains and rivers in the wild, and he relied on the magical effect of wind-mocking pupil. Yu Xuejiao's expression was a little complicated. She thought to herself, if he wasn't a spiritual celestial master, how could he find so many rare and precious spiritual mineral veins? However, since Lin Sun didn't want to admit it, she couldn't ask again. It didn't take long for the final transaction price to be estimated. It was a total of 1,020 pieces of top-grade spiritual marrow. When they heard this number, even Yu Xuejiao and Yu Xuetian were dumbfounded. They were in a trance. This was an astronomical number. Even Yu family, known as the first force in Snow Maple City, couldn't take out so many spiritual marrow in a short time. At this time, they finally understood why Lin Sun said that he was worried that Snow Treasure House couldn't afford this batch of goods. Lin Sun seemed to see some clues and said, "I need a batch of congealing jade, preferably of high quality or medium quality. The more, the better. I wonder how many can Snow Treasure House provide?" Yu Xuejiao was instantly refreshed. Chapter 827. 600 pieces of top-grade spiritual marrow, 30 top-grade congealing jades, and 66 middle-grade congealing jades. When Lin Sun walked out of Snow Treasure House, the spiritual mines and spiritual veins he obtained in the wilderness a few days ago had turned into such a fortune. He was very satisfied. The magical effect of wind-mocking eyes was to detect acupoints and pulse, but for Lin Sun, it was no less than mastering a way to make money. Lin Sun took out a map made of jade slips, on which were the locations and directions of all the provinces in the West Hung territory. This was what he had just bought from Snow Treasure House. There are more than 10 provinces between here and Fengxi province, which is about 1,000,000 miles away. It will take me 10 days to get there, Lin Sun thought silently. Now that he was wanted by the Black Sea Tengu clan, he could only choose to go through remote mountains and forests, even if he wanted to go to Fengxi province. In this way, it would undoubtedly take more time to get to Fengxi province. The street was bustling with people and shops. Lin Sun walked along the street, through the busy market, along a bluestone road, and finally arrived in front of a restaurant. Drunken Flower Shade. The name of the restaurant was quite elegant. It was 300 meters high, built entirely of cyan jade, surrounded by a faint mist, and set off among the snow maple trees, giving it an antique atmosphere. Here it is. Lin Sun glanced at the name of the restaurant and walked in. Drunken Flower Shade, the oldest restaurant in Snow Maple City, was very unusual. Most of the guests were nobles in the city, and there was no lack of top powerhouses in the city. Not only were they drinking, but they were also communicating and discussing with each other. Lin Sun went straight to the top floor, chose a seat by the window, and ordered a pot of the exclusive old wine of the restaurant, snow maple wine, and 3 pounds of spiritual roe deer meat. In 3 months, the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival will begin. As far as I know, Li Qinghuan, the leader of the young generation of Tsangmei Taoist sect in Qingyun Province, Wu Duanya, the first inherited disciple of Xianyang sect in Huayin Province, and the third prince of Golden Condor clan in Floating Wood Province, have already set off for Kangwu Mountain. This year's Lantern Festival is indeed unprecedented. The young geniuses and heaven's favorites are gathered like stars in the sky. They will definitely shine during the festival. Exactly. I heard that one of the 5 great elite disciples of our Dreamcloud Prefecture's Ascension Sword sect, Zhuoquanglan, will be leading a group of geniuses of the Ascension Sword sect's younger generation to the Tao Discussion Lantern Discussion. Actually, the person that receives the most attention during the Tao Lantern Discussion this time is undoubtedly the Holy Maiden of the Profound Sword School, Ji Xingyao. I heard that the peerless genius from the southern profound world's paradises of longevity, Yu Lingkong, will be participating in this grand event along with Ji Xingyao. What a pity! A gathering like this only belongs to the top geniuses of this world. Ordinary people like us don't even have the qualifications to participate. In the pavilion on the top floor, all the cultivators were discussing the rumors and news related to the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, and they frequently sighed with emotion. This caused Lin Sun to be slightly surprised because he never expected that the Tao Discussion Lantern Conference would actually receive so much attention before it even began. All those years ago in the Fire Spirit Province, he'd once been invited by Yu Jianming, a genius of the younger generation of the Thousand Illusion Tao sect, and Yu Jianming hoped to participate in the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival with him. After that, Fang Linhan of the Baji Saber Nunnery had expressed that he would head to the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival no matter what. Up until now, discussions related to the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival could even be heard in the border cities of Dreamcloud Prefecture. So how could Lin Sun not be surprised? Looks like when the curtains to the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival are drawn, it'll probably draw the attention of the entire Westlake region. Lin Sun drank wine as he chewed on the spirit deer meat. The snow maple wine was sweet and clear, and its aftertaste was mellow and carried a unique fragrance. On the other hand, the spirit deer meat was marinated using a secret technique, causing it to be fragrant, spicy, and chewy. Its flavor was superb. Occasionally, Lin Sun's gaze would intentionally or unintentionally look towards a room. A group of figures sat upright in the room with a terrifying aura, and all of them had arrogant and cold expressions. There is utterly no need to discern them carefully to know that they were from the Dark Demon Dog clan. According to the information Lin Sun obtained from the message tree earlier, any cultivator that obtained information related to him will be able to obtain a reward of 1,000 high-grade spiritual essence from the Dark Demon Dog clan. Lin Sun's objective for coming to Flower Shade Restaurant this time was very simple. He wanted to see if he would be able to obtain this reward if he made an appearance. After he was satiated, Lin Sun was just about to make a move when he suddenly saw a group of young men and women walking up to the top floor. All of them were handsome men and beautiful women, and they possessed extraordinary bearing. They were like celestial beings that possessed dazzling elegance. Shockingly, the person in the lead was one of the 5 great elite disciples of the Ascension Sword sect, Zhuoquanglan and the young Sword King, Shai Yutong, and the others followed by his side. As soon as they appeared, the sounds of conversation in the restaurant instantly vanished, and it was perfectly silent. The gazes of everyone were drawn over while their expressions carried reverence. Obviously, these guests recognized the identity of Zhuoquanglan and the others, so they were shocked in their hearts. They seem to have never imagined that the disciples of the Ascension Sword sect would make an appearance here. As soon as Zhuo Guanglan and the others arrived, they heard hearty laughter resound from a room, and then a tall young man walked out with large strides. "Brother Zhuo, you finally arrived. Please come in quickly." The young man wore a fiery red Taoist robe, and he had slanted brows and starry eyes. As he looked around, he seemed to be in high spirits, elegant and unrestrained. In terms of might, he was actually not inferior to Zhuo Guanglan, especially the space between his brows. There actually seemed to be a blazing talisman of fire that was dazzling and resplendent, and it caused others to be unable to open their eyes. It seemed to be extremely miraculous. On the other hand, all the guests were unable to maintain their composure when they saw this young man, and all of them revealed expressions of shock and disbelief. The fifth prince of the Flamecraw clan, Lu Jioga. Someone cried out involuntarily. A wave of gasps resounded in the surroundings. The Flamecraw clan was a clan that could be ranked in the top 5 of the West Shore world, and their holy son, Lu Jioga, was even a legendary genius. When he was born, a fiery glow descended from the heavens and condensed into a mysterious mark of fire that was branded on his chest. He was reputed to be born with a body of fire, and he possessed unbelievable natural talent and physique. In the current younger generation of the West Shore world, Lu Jioga was the indisputable peerless genius that shone brilliantly, and his name shook the entire West Shore world. Now, such a legendary genius had actually appeared here. How could it not be shocking? Zhuo Guanglan, one of the 5 great disciples of the emergent sword sect, and Lu Jioga, the 5th prince of the Flamecraw clan. What were these 2 peerless geniuses meeting here for? All of a sudden, everyone's curiosity was aroused. The peerless genius of the Flamecraw clan? His aura is very strong, and he already possesses the cultivation of the reincarnation development realm. He's not the least bit inferior to Zhuo Guanglan. Lin Sun seemed to be lost in thought. At the same time, Shai Yutong also noticed Lin Sun's presence, but he was only slightly startled before he withdrew his gaze. This was equivalent to directly ignoring Lin Sun, and he had no intention of exchanging pleasantries with Lin Sun. On the contrary, when he noticed Lin Sun's gaze on him, a proud smile appeared on the corners of Shai Yutong's mouth, and there was a faintly discernible sense of superiority and pride. Lin Sun immediately laughed in his heart. Did this guy really think that being with Zhuo Guanglan and Lu Jioga could make Lin Sun look at him in a different light and feel envy? Not long after, the group from Feather Transformation Sword Sect and the 5th prince of the Flamecraw clan, Lu Jioga, entered the box together. Lin Sun had already finished the wine in his cup at this moment. Without hesitation, he stood up and strode toward another box. Sitting in that private room was an expert from the Black Sea Tengu clan. What is this guy going to do? All the guests present frowned. They did not have a good impression of the Black Demon Dog clan at all. At this moment, seeing that Lin Sun, a human cultivator, had the posture of greeting the experts of the Black Demon Dog clan, they could not help but feel a little disgusted. He's wearing a cloak, and even his face is covered by the brim of the hat. He's definitely up to no good. Who knows, he might be up to something bad. Someone snorted coldly. He did not dare to speak too bluntly, for fear of angering the experts of the Black Demon Dog clan in the box. However, his accusations towards Lin Sun were clearly unbridled. I heard that just now, a bounty notice appeared in front of the message tree in the city. It seems that the Black Nightmare Tengu clan wants to capture a young demon god. Don't tell me this fellow is here to inform them and claim his reward? That's really possible. How shameless. The guests discussed animatedly, looking at Lin Sun with suspicion, contempt, and disdain. If not for the presence of the experts of the Black Demon Dog clan in the box, their words might have been even harsher and harsher. Lin Sun felt helpless. He knew that he had been misunderstood, but he could not be bothered to explain further. He came to the front of the box and looked at the experts of the Black Demon Dog clan, saying, "I heard that anyone who can provide clues to the bounty notice will be rewarded handsomely." As soon as this was said, all the guests present could not sit still. Their faces were all gloomy. Indeed, this guy was a scum. In order to obtain the reward, he did not hesitate to inform the Black Demon Dog clan. How shameless. People nowadays are really blinded by greed. For the sake of some money, they can even throw away their pride and dignity. These guests did not dare to go against him. They could only make sarcastic remarks and ridicule Lin's son. Do you want to die? Shut up. Suddenly, a cold rebuke came from the box. It was a young man in a black robe. He had a long and narrow face, and his eyes were blood-red and demonic. His whole body was filled with a violent and terrifying aura. Instantly, all the guests present kept quiet out of fear. Their expressions were uncertain, and they dared not say another word. No matter how dissatisfied they were, they did not dare to contradict and confront the Black Demon Dog Clan face to face. They were afraid of bringing trouble and disaster upon themselves. At the same time, the young man in the black robe looked at Lin Sun with a pair of demonic blood-red eyes. He said lightly, "You're right. As long as you provide clues to that kid, the 1,000 pieces of upper spiritual marrow in this storage bag will be yours." Clang. Chapter 828. In an instant, the atmosphere on this floor of the restaurant became silent, and many guests looked over. At this time, the act of snitching on the Black Demon Tengu clan in front of everyone was undoubtedly shameless and deserving of disdain. After all, the Black Demon Tengu clan was notorious, and they were a clan that almost everyone in the cultivation world hated. 1,000 pieces of upper spiritual marrow, that's far from enough. Lin Sun said calmly, "I don't believe that the target you want is worth so little." The black-robed young man frowned, and a cold light shot out of his demonic blood-colored eyes. He did not expect that a guy who came to claim a reward would dare to demand so much in front of him. He could not help but feel a murderous intent in his heart. Brother Go Chi, it seems like this friend is very confident. As long as he can provide clues about the little bastard, it doesn't matter if we give him more spiritual marrow. A rather coquettish woman with snow-white hair said. She looked at Yin Xing, and her lips were scarlet. Her breasts were white and smooth, and her figure was very sexy. But when he heard her words, an imperceptible cold light flashed through Lin Sun's eyes under the brim of the hat. Little bastard? Just because of this sentence, she was sentenced to death by Lin Sun. Clang! The black-robed young man called Go Chi threw out another storage bag and said with a cold expression, "There are 300 pieces of upper spiritual marrow in this bag. Altogether, it's 1,300 pieces of upper spiritual marrow. I believe that this price is enough to buy the life of a half-step king. If you're still not satisfied, don't blame us for being rude." Lin Sun did not even look at it, and shook his head. "Not enough. I can tell you the specific location of the target. I believe that this clue is far more valuable than this amount of spiritual marrow." Even the guests who were watching from the side could not help but click their tongues. This guy's appetite was really big. Was he not afraid of being stuffed to death? 1,300 pieces of upper spiritual marrow was already a sky-high price, enough to make a half-step king sell his life without hesitation. But this guy still thought it was not enough. "Friend, you've gone too far." Go Chi's face was cold, and his scarlet eyes overflowed with a terrifying cold light. "Do you really think that the Black Demon Tengu clan is a fool? Hee, you want to use a single clue to pinch us and rip us off. Friend, are you sure you want to do this?" The silver-haired flirtatious woman chuckled and said, "One must know one's own limits. If you cooperate now, perhaps you might even gain the favor of my Black Sea Tengu tribe." She had mentioned the Black Nightmare Tengu clan, which was an enormous power. It was undoubtedly a warning and a threat. Lin Sun smiled silently and said, "In my impression, the Black Sea Tengu clan is a big clan with influence all over the ancient Desolation realm. But now you can't even take out some spiritual marrow? This was truly disappointing. It seems that none of you are willing to obtain any clues about the target. Since that's the case, I'll take my leave." With that, he was about to leave. "Stop!" Go Chi suddenly stood up while his entire body revealed killing intent, and his imposing aura was terrifying, causing the bodies of all the guests to go cold while their expressions turned grim. If all of you were to make a move now, it would undoubtedly be equivalent to telling the entire world that the bounty notice issued by your Black Nightmare Tengu clan was a pretense, and you were intentionally trying to fool everyone. Lin Sun said slowly. Go Chi's face was livid with anger, and he wanted to slap this bastard to death. He had never seen anyone who dared to threaten his clan like this. At this moment, the silver-haired, flirtatious woman spoke. Brother Go Chi, this friend is right. We may not be able to break our promise. Since that's the case, my friend, please name a price. She was filled with killing intent, and at the same time, she transmitted her voice to Go Chi. Satisfy him first. When we get the clues, it won't be too late to take back the rewards from his corpse. Go Chi's face was gloomy, and he said nothing. At least 5,000 pieces of upper spiritual marrow, right? Lin Sun said with a smile. As soon as this was said, the eyes of all the guests almost popped out. They thought they had heard wrongly. This was not just an exorbitant price. It was clearly an attempt to rip off those black dogs. Go Chi was already furious, and his eyes were overflowing with killing intent. Are you sure? Lin Sun said casually. Of course, it could be negotiated, but not too little. After all, many people now know that the target you are dealing with is a dangerous person. If I expose his tracks like this, I will have to face the consequences of his revenge. My friend, you are clearly blackmailing us. The silver-haired, flirtatious woman was so angry that her nose almost became crooked. They had never seen such a reckless guy who dared to blackmail them. Did he not want to live well enough? Most importantly, they really didn't have that much spiritual marrow on them. This wasn't a small amount, and it was shockingly huge instead. It was sufficient to purchase a peerless king-grade precious herb, or an imperial weapon. In the end, Go Chi decided to calm Lin Sun down first, and settle the score with him after he got the clues of the target. Here are 3,000 pieces of upper spiritual marrow. If you're still not satisfied, then we can only drop the matter. Go Chi and the other 7 people gathered 3,000 pieces of upper spiritual marrow and put them in their storage bags. Then he looked at Lin Sun coldly. Now, can you tell me the clues of the target? 3,000 pieces of upper spiritual marrow just to buy a clue. All the guests were extremely shocked, and they also realized how determined the Black Demon Tengu clan was to capture and kill the target. While they were talking, even the future leader of Feathersword Sect and the 5th prince of Fire Raven clan, Lu Jioga, were alarmed. Who is this person? He is really bold to extort the Black Demon Tengu clan, Lu Jioga chuckled. He was dressed in a fiery red Taoist robe with a white jade belt, and had a handsome face with a kind of arrogance. I have seen this person once. Zhuo Quanlan frowned slightly. He is from the mortal world, but I didn't expect that he would choose to inform the Black Demon Tengu clan, which is really despicable. Junior brother Xia, you know this person. Tell me, what kind of person is he? As he spoke, he looked at Shai Yutong on the side. He was just an uncouth boy from a remote village, but I didn't expect him to be so spineless. From now on, I will draw a line with him. Shai Yutong looked indifferent, but he was a little angry in his heart. He thought that Lin Sun had made him lose face in front of everyone, and he was ashamed to be associated with Lin Sun. Lu Jioga responded with an "oh" and smiled. I'm rather curious as to who the Black Sea Tengu clan's target is. They're willing to fork out 3,000 upper-grade spiritual essence just for a single clue. Immediately, a successor of Feathersword Sect said, Speaking of this, I heard that not long ago, there was news from the message tree in the city that a young man named Lin Sun. He recounted the matter of Lin Sun being wanted, and also briefly introduced the shocking duel between Lin Sun and the Silver Mask Girl. Hearing this, even Zhuo Quanlan and Lu Jioga were surprised and moved. They didn't expect such a peerless figure to appear in this world. By the way, Junior brother Xia, I remember that the young man from the mortal world is also called Lin Sun. Suddenly, Zhuo Quanlan's heart skipped a beat, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Shai Yutong was also shocked when he heard all this, and subconsciously shook his head. It can't be him. It should be someone with the same name. What a joke. If Lin Sun was a peerless talent, then what was Shai Yutong? This was definitely impossible. Seeing this, the others also felt relieved. How could a young man from the mortal world have such a peerless style? What's more, Shai Yutong, who knew the young man from the mortal world, denied it himself. These two Lin Sun couldn't be the same person. At the same time, Lin Sun immediately agreed in the face of the heavy reward of 3,000 pieces of upper-grade spiritual marrow and said with a smile, "Barely enough." What did he mean by barely enough? Hearing this, Go Chi and the silver-haired woman's faces became worse, and they almost couldn't control the killing intent in their hearts. At this time, Lin Sun raised his hand to take the storage bag, but was interrupted by Go Chi. "Wait, you haven't told me the clue, and you want to get the reward? I just want to check if the amount is enough," Lin Sun said casually. "What's more, I suspect that you just promised me verbally. Once I tell you the clue, I'm afraid you'll regret it. So, it's better for me to keep the spiritual marrow for now." Saying this, he picked up the storage bag and weighed it in his palm. At this moment, Go Chi really wanted to kill Lin Sun. He gritted his teeth with hatred, but in the end, he held back and said coldly, "Now, can you tell me?" Their faces all became gloomy and cold, and their killing intent was almost undisguised. How could their spiritual marrow be taken so easily? This guy really didn't know what was good for him. "Don't worry, everyone. I'm here, and I can't escape. Why are you so nervous?" Lin Sun slowly put away the storage bag, and then said with a smile, "I'm not full yet. Would you like to have a meal together? Eat your mother's meal. If you don't tell me the clue again, I'll tear you apart." A strong black Tengu couldn't help but roar. "Friend, are you messing with us?" Go Chi also had a kind of anger burning in his heart, and his killing intent filled the air. The faces of the guests in the hall changed dramatically. Was this going to start a war? In another box, the future leader of the Yuhua sword sect and Lu Jioga also looked over. Shai Yutang's expression was still indifferent. He wished that Lin Sun would be killed, so that he wouldn't make a fool of himself and lose face. At this moment, Lin Sun stopped smiling and glanced at Go Chi and others, saying, "I'm not kidding you. I've been in front of you all the time, but you just have to ask me for the clue. I'm also quite helpless. Is there anyone more stupid than you in this world?" Suddenly, everyone present was stunned. What was going on? You're Lin Sun?" At this moment, Go Chi seemed to understand and immediately shouted. The silver-haired, coquettish woman's expression also changed, as if they were struck by lightning. Chapter 829. Whether it was Go Chi or the silver-haired woman, they were so depressed that they almost vomited blood. The target they wanted to kill appeared in front of them, but they didn't recognize him. Instead, they were extorted by Lin Sun for a huge amount of spiritual essence. It was so shameful that they didn't realize it until now. If this matter was spread out, how could they keep their faces? "You're courting death." Go Chi couldn't hold back anymore. He let out a low roar, and a huge shadow of a black dog appeared behind him. It was incomparably terrifying and overflowing with black light. "Kill!" the silver-haired, coquettish woman shouted. They all moved to kill Lin Sun to vent the shame and anger in their hearts. But Lin Sun smiled and said, "I've been waiting for you to fall into my pot to satisfy my appetite." Boom! Lin Sun took a step forward, and his momentum suddenly changed as if he had turned into a demon. He punched out, and the fist force rushed out like a real dragon, directly breaking a man's chest. His bones were broken, and blood burst out. Everyone was shocked. How terrible it was. A strong man was killed with one punch? How dare you? Go Chi rushed over and slapped down with his palm. With a bang, blood surged like a river of purgatory blood pouring down, which was a terrifying scene. Dong! Lin Sun took a step forward, and a snow-white ice dragon rushed out. It raised its head and roared like a dragon. With a bang, it waved its tail and dissolved Go Chi's attack. Lin Sun had already taken the opportunity to launch his killing move. Puff! Puff! Like lightning, he first confined several oncoming opponents with the hegemonic prohibition, and then suppressed them with the seal of Swanee. The Black Sea Tengu powerhouses didn't even have time to dodge before their bodies exploded in the air, turning into a mist of blood. It was too domineering. Everyone present gasped. As soon as Lin Sun made a move, he killed all the people on the spot, like slaughtering chickens and monkeys. His arrogant and matchless posture was like a demon descending to the world. These dogs are too weak. Their meat must be terrible. Lin Sun's eyes were like lightning, which deterred everyone. Only Go Chi and the silver-haired woman were left in the field. Lin Sun, you're courting death. Go Chi roared, angered to the point where he was trembling. He also felt fear. Only now did they realize that their opponents were too powerful, not something they could contend against. This caused Go Chi to feel as if he was on the verge of collapse, and he was on the verge of going mad. First, he was deceived and extorted, and then he killed them as if they were food. But it just so happened that they weren't a match for him. This simply caused him to feel aggrieved and humiliated to the extreme. Hand over your life. Lin Sun's figure flashed, and he confronted Go Chi with the 9 strikes of shaking heaven. His fists were wide and simple, with a kind of earth-shaking and earth-shattering power. Boom! This restaurant trembled, affected by the collision of this terrifying power about to collapse. The guests inside were all horrified, fleeing in panic. Only the disciple of the Ascension Sword sect and the 5th prince of the Flameclaw clan, Lu Jioga, could be considered to be composed. But when they witnessed the strength Lin Sun revealed, they couldn't help but be shocked in their hearts. Kacha! Go Chi's right arm was severed, and blood splattered everywhere. He was a reincarnation developing realm expert, and was considered a top figure among the younger generation. However, he had suffered a great loss in the first round. Everyone present was moved. Kill! At the same time, the silver-haired woman let out a loud shout, but she suddenly flashed, broke through the wall with a bang, and fled out of the restaurant. Obviously, she knew that she was no match for Lin Sun, and she didn't dare to continue fighting, intending to seek help. However, how could Lin Sun let her go? An obscure syllable came from his lips. Tut. Paleo's roar. Lin Sun's whole body shone like a terrifying sun, and a sound wave transformed into a golden ripple that spread out from his mouth. That roar was vast and boundless, like the cry of an ancient god, and it was boundlessly terrifying, as if it could shatter mountains and rivers. Puff! The silver-haired woman who had just flown out of the restaurant exploded directly, turning into a cloud of blood mist. Hiss! A gasp sounded in the field. Everyone was shocked, and their souls trembled. It was too terrifying. That woman was a reincarnation developing realm existence, but she was killed by a roar. Ah! Someone in the restaurant screamed, and his face was pale with fright. What a terrifying secret method inheritance. The eyes of Lu Jiuga, the 5th prince of the Fire Raven clan, overflowed with divine light, and his heart was slightly touched. This reminded him of the talent inheritance of the golden-horned Azure Lion clan, Lion's Roar. The successors of the Emergent Sword sect were also surprised, and their expressions changed slightly. They had thought that this guy from the mortal world was very spineless, and it was despicable for him to snitch on them for the sake of the spiritual marrow. They had never thought that in the blink of an eye, Lin Sun seemed to have become another person. His divine power was matchless, arrogant, and domineering, and it shocked them. Shai Yutan's heart was in turmoil, and his face was gloomy. It had only been a few years, and he couldn't imagine how the country boy who had just arrived at the Forbidden City could become so powerful. He couldn't accept this. The roar shocked everyone. But for Lin Sun, this was the result of him deliberately controlling his strength. Otherwise, the entire restaurant was bound to disintegrate and turn into powder in an instant. At this moment, his figure was tall and graceful, overflowing with an illusory green glow. His temperament was otherworldly and ethereal, but his power was unparalleled, like a demon god descending to the mortal world. Only Go Chi was left in the restaurant. He looked at Lin Sun in despair, and his heart was drowned in fear. Only now did he fully realize how terrifying this young man in front of him was. Lin Sun, are you planning to become the enemy of the Black Demon Tengu tribe? Go Chi gritted his teeth. He could only rely on the power of his tribe to intimidate Lin Sun. Crack! Lin Sun didn't bother to talk nonsense. He leaped forward and continued to kill. There was no suspense at all, and in the blink of an eye, Gochi's neck was broken. With a bang, Gochi turned back to his original form, the huge black dog body lying on the ground, blood gushing out. At this point, all the experts of the Black Demon Tengu tribe were killed. Or rather, it should be said that this was a massacre. They didn't meet any strong resistance at all, and were dealt with by Lin Sun as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. That kind of decisive killing and invincible power made the hearts of the guests in the restaurant tremble again. He was too strong, and it subverted their imagination. Lin Sun seemed to have done something that couldn't be more casual. He picked up the black dog body that Gochi had transformed into and stuffed it into his storage ring. However, before he left, he looked at the other box and locked his eyes on Shai Yutong. Shai Yutong's eyes narrowed, and he was a little surprised. Did this guy still want to do something to him? Zhuo Kuanglan, who was at the side, looked calm and thoughtful. Lu Jioga was drinking and watching from the side, and the heirs of the emergent sword sect nearby were secretly on guard. At this moment, the atmosphere was a little quiet and oppressive. Lin Sun smiled and said, "You did well just now. It's best that you draw a clear line between us. This way, it'll save you the trouble of having the Black Sea Tengu tribe find trouble with you because of me. From now on, we're no longer friends." Lin Sun heard what Shai Yutong had said before. In front of the heirs of the emergent sword sect and Lu Jioga, Shai Yutong regarded him as an uncouth country boy and was ashamed to be associated with him. This made Lin Sun feel bitterly disappointed. He didn't want to retaliate against Shai Yutong, but from now on, if Shai Yutong slandered and humiliated him like this again, then don't blame him for being impolite. After saying that, he withdrew his gaze and floated away. Shai Yutong's expression was uncertain, and he seemed to be extremely angry. He suddenly stood up and looked at Lin Sun from afar like lightning, as if he was going to teach Lin Sun a lesson. "Junior brother Xie, don't be angry. He's just a guy who gets carried away. Why bother with him?" Zhuo Kuanglan smiled and stopped Shai Yutong. "Yes, this guy is very arrogant. He even dared to make an enemy of the Black Demon Tengu tribe. It won't be long before he is doomed." That's right. The Black Sea Tengu clan is so powerful that even the ancient orthodoxies in the world don't dare to provoke them. He's just a coarse youth from the lower realm. Yet he chose to make enemies with such a clan. Isn't he courting death? Other successors of Yuhua sword sect also comforted him. Shai Yutong sighed in his heart and sat down silently. In fact, he was still angry and wanted to kill Lin Sun with his own hands. Did he really think that he could be lawless and disregard me just because he became stronger? This was the reason for Shai Yutong's anger. In fact, it was a psychological gap. A long time ago, he had never taken Lin Sun seriously and regarded him as an uncouth country boy. But he was born in the Sief family, one of the 7 top aristocratic families of Xiao Empire. His talent was outstanding, and his status and identity were not comparable to Lin Sun at all. Until he entered the ancient Desolation realm to cultivate. He successfully joined Yuhua sword sect to cultivate, which gave him a natural sense of superiority when facing Lin Sun. But the things that happened today made him feel embarrassed. He suddenly realized that the young man he looked down upon had now grown to a point where he was about to surpass him. How could he, who had always been proud, accept this? This young man is not simple. Lu Jioga, the 5th prince of the Fire Raven clan, who had been watching from the side, said softly. His eyes were surging with divine light. "If it's possible for him to appear at the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival, I'd be interested in sparring with him." Immediately, Zhuo Kuanglan, Shai Yutong, and the others were shocked. They didn't expect Lu Jioga to think so highly of Lin Sun. At this moment, there was a cry of surprise in the restaurant. "I'm sure that he's the peerless talent that rose in the fire spirit state. A young man like a demon. It must be him. The Black Demon Tengu clan wanted him, but he took the initiative to show up and kill his opponent. Only he has the courage to do so. My God, this demon Lin actually appeared in our Snow Maple City?" There was an uproar in the restaurant, and everyone was extremely shocked. Previously, They despised Lin Sun's behavior, thinking that he was shameless and wanted to tell the Black Demon Tengu clan about Demon Lin's whereabouts. Who would have thought that he was Demon Lin? This was embarrassing and also made people sigh with emotion. Perhaps only Demon Lin dared to come and claim his own reward. Hearing these discussions, Zhuo Quanglan, Lu Jiuge, and Shai Yutong suddenly realized something. This young man from the lower realm was really Lin Sun, the Demon Lin who had risen to fame in the West Hung boundary. What was funny was that Shai Yutong had said with certainty that these two Lin Sun were not the same person, but merely had the same name. Chapter 830. Shai Yutong clenched his fists quietly, and his heart was filled with unspeakable shame and indignation. A youth that he had never thought much of had now become Fiend God Lin, who shocked and caused an uproar. He could not accept it. At this moment, even Zhuo Quanglan was silent for a moment, and then he chuckled. In this case, I also want to learn from him and see his ability. I hope he has the opportunity to participate in the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival. All the descendants of Feathersword sect looked at each other. A young man from the mortal world had made such a big sensation. Not only did he arouse the interest of Lu Jiuge, the fifth prince of Fire Raven clan, but also Zhuo Quanglan, one of the 5 inherited disciples of Feathersword sect, seemed to pay attention to this young man, which inevitably caught them off guard. If you dare to appear in the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, I will defeat you with my own hands first. Shai Yutong's heart surged with hatred, and his teeth were almost crushed. Dude, what happened in the restaurant? Outside the restaurant, a strong practitioner of Wind Whisper clan began to inquire about the news like a cat smelling blood. When he learned everything he wanted to know, the strong practitioner's eyes shone with excitement, and he grinned. Big news. Absolutely big news. The strong practitioner of Wind Whisper clan seemed to be able to imagine that when he spread the news, it was bound to cause a sensation and attract everyone's attention. He made a prompt decision, turned around, and went to the message tree to spread the news as soon as possible. However, just as he moved, he was stopped. Are you going to spread the news? Why do you ask if you know? Get out of the way, don't waste time. The strong practitioner of Wind Whisper clan was very impatient. However, when he saw the appearance of the person who stopped him, he jumped 3 feet high and said involuntarily, Lin. Before he could say anything, Lin Sun glared at him, and he immediately shut his mouth. What's your name? Lin Sun asked. Bai Xiaoxing. Good name. Hey Lin. Child Lin, what can I do for you? Bai Xiaoxing asked. Do me a favor and spread the news that I, Lin Sun, have no intention to be the enemy of the entire Black Sea Dog tribe. But if they still don't intend to stop, don't blame me for being rude. Young Master Lin, can I ask exactly how you will be impolite? Bai Xiaoxing's heart itched, and he was extremely curious. Lin Sun said in a joking tone, maybe one day you will slaughter all the black demonic dogs in the world? Bai Xiaoxing was instantly flabbergasted. This wasn't just impolite, it was obvious that he wanted to annihilate the entire Black Sea Tengu clan. He couldn't help but ask, Young Master, are you joking? Just take it as a joke. Lin Sun said with a smile. Then he floated away. However, Lin Sun didn't expect that soon after he left Snow Maple City, the all-seeing star made such a big movement. Demon God Lin has appeared in Snow Maple City and killed a group of Black Sea Tengu experts in a fit of rage. At the same time, Demon God Lin announced that he has no intention to be the enemy of the Black Sea Tengu clan. But if the Black Sea Tengu clan still doesn't intend to stop, he will slaughter all the black demonic dogs in the world one day. On this day, when the news spread, the whole Snow Maple City was in an uproar. Demon God Lin is so fierce and domineering. Who dares to ignore the threat of the Black Sea Tengu clan like him? Many practitioners exclaimed, thinking that Lin Sun was full of courage and his demonic power was shocking. For so many years, I haven't seen any younger generation dare to declare war on the Black Sea Tengu clan like Demon God Lin. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Some practitioners of the older generation sighed with emotion. Humph, this lad has just risen for a few days. Does he really think he is invincible in the world? Too hard is easy to break. His arrogance is like a meteor in the sky, destined to disappear in a flash and die in this world, unable to live long. Some practitioners thought otherwise, thinking that Lin Sun's move was too stupid. Wanting to fight against the entire Black Sea Tengu clan alone was no different from an egg hitting a stone or an ant trying to shake a tree. They were afraid that he would be doomed before long. No matter what, this news about Lin Sun set off a great uproar, shaking the whole city and spreading to the whole Cloud Dream State at an astonishing speed. Some strong practitioners of the Black Sea Tengu clan were so angry that they almost went berserk. Slaughter all the black demonic dogs in the world? This lad should be killed. Moreover, they were also dissatisfied with the Wind Whisperer clan. What the hell was this news? It was so insulting. How could the Wind Whisperer clan say such words? Realizing that the situation was not good, the strong practitioners of the Wind Whisperer clan quickly spread the news. Friends of the Black Sea Tengu clan, please don't misunderstand. This is what Demon God Lin said. It doesn't represent the attitude of the Wind Whisperer clan. But no matter what, this news caused a great uproar and even attracted the attention of many major forces. They began to investigate and understand Lin Sun's identity and background. For a time, Lin Sun, like a comet, officially entered the vision of many major forces with this series of deeds. However, the West Hung world was too large after all, with thousands of provinces. Although Lin Sun's deeds were sensational, they were only limited to one area. His reputation had not yet reached the point of shaking the whole West Hung world. But as time went by, more and more practitioners and forces in the West Hung world would inevitably know the existence of Lin Sun. This was fame. Among the younger generation, some people became famous all over the world by virtue of their superb talent, and some people were known by their identity and status. There were also some people like Lin Sun, who had gone through countless bloody battles and killed their way to fame. For Lin Sun, he had just arrived in the West Hung world for less than half a year. Among the younger generation, he could only be regarded as a rising star. Although his influence was fermenting and spreading, he was still far behind some peerless talents who were famous in the whole West Hung world. Of course, this was only the difference of fame and influence, not the real comparison of fighting power. On the main trunk of the message tree, there were 3 ice leaves the size of cattail leaf fans, displaying different scenes. On the first leaf, Lin Sun was fighting against the mysterious masked girl in the sky like a demon god. On the second leaf, there was a bounty order from the Black Sea Dog tribe, full of bloody murderous spirit, which was frightening. On the third leaf, there was the news about Lin Sun killing a group of strong Black Sea Dog tribe in the Drunken Flower Shade restaurant, including Lin Sun's voice against the Black Sea Dog tribe. The successors of Feathersword Sect and Lu Jioga, the 5th prince of the Fire Raven clan, stood there, staring at the different messages on the 3 leaves, and fell into a long silence. Suddenly, an invisible aura surged from Lu Jioga's body, causing his fiery red robe to flutter. A sharp light flashed in his eyes as he released a terrifying aura. This shocked everyone nearby. Their expressions changed greatly, and they all retreated. Almost at the same time, Zhuo Quanglan, who was standing in silence, also shot out a fierce sword intent straight into the sky. His black hair fluttered while his ramrod straight figure was peerlessly terrifying like a sword, and his imposing aura caused the hearts of the nearby people to tremble and gasp. However, neither Lu Jioga nor Zhuo Quanglan seemed to be aware of it. Their eyes were fixed on the battle on the first leaf without blinking. Even they had been aroused with the fighting spirit in their hearts. Some sharp-eyed people immediately saw that the aura reflected around Lu Jioga and Zhuo Quanglan was affected by the battle on the screen. This was the feeling of aura between the peerless talents. It was quite subtle, and only those who had reached their level could understand it. Shai Yutong also saw this scene. His heart was in turmoil, and he felt more and more resentful. He couldn't imagine how Lin Sun could grow so fast. The peerless demeanor of looking down on the mountains and rivers shocked him. until he saw the unintentional aura of Zhuo Quanlan and Lu Jioga, which made Sha Yutong feel like he was dreaming. Did this mean that Lin Sun already had the potential and foundation to fight against Senior Zhuo and Lu Jioga? No, impossible. How could he rise so fast in just a few years? Sha Yutong couldn't accept it. He was eager to see Lin Sun and fight him head-on. Only by defeating Lin Sun could he get rid of the knot in his heart. Perhaps this could already be called an inner demon. If he didn't get rid of it, it would definitely become a hindrance to his cultivation. Sha Yutong was very smart and talented. Otherwise, he couldn't have achieved what he had today. He almost instantly judged that Lin Sun had become a knot in his heart. If he didn't defeat Lin Sun, his state of mind was bound to leave a shadow. For practitioners, once such a thing happened, it was simply a disaster. It would seriously affect their cultivation and even stop them on the road of cultivation. However, Sha Yutong had never thought that there would be such a day. A young man who he had never paid attention to could affect his mind now. If this kid is able to survive the pursuit of the Black Sea Tengu clan, he will definitely become a top figure among the younger generation of our Western Hung world that cannot be ignored. At this time, Lu Jioga suddenly spoke and made such a judgment. Is the battle of the world really coming? A young man who is unknown in the past can rise like a comet. In today's world, how many people are there like him who rose to fame from obscurity? Zhuo Quanlan murmured, his eyes full of frightening light. Zhuo Quanlan and Lu Jioga glanced at each other as though they were telepathic. They could see through each other's thoughts. When Lin Sun appeared, there was no doubt that they found another worthy opponent. Of course, the premise was that this young man could survive this confrontation with the Black Demon Dog tribe. Otherwise, everything would be empty talk. It was also in the evening of the same day that groups of Black Sea Spirit Cavalry began to appear in Snow Maple City. Groups after groups of experts belonging to the Black Sea Tengu race appeared with murderous intent. Gathering together, the entire Snow Maple City was filled with a tense and oppressive atmosphere, as if a storm was brewing. Chapter 831. In the wilderness, the mountains stretched on. In the evening, the sunset glow was like fire, dyeing the green sky red and bathing the mountains in it, showing a magnificent orange red. The sunset was infinitely beautiful, but it was near dusk. Lin Sun walked alone in the ancient and primitive mountain forest. The luster cast by the sunset glow made his handsome figure very long. Occasionally, the roar of beasts and the cry of birds could be heard, which made the wilderness more quiet. Creation of all things, Tao, follows nature. Cultivation and enlightenment should be sought from heaven and earth. Lin Sun walked steadily in the mountain forest with his clothes fluttering in the wind. The ancient forest was also dyed with a layer of brilliant red, hazy like smoke. Along the way, Lin Sun ran the secret method of Qianyo's heart, and his state of mind showed a kind of dustless and ethereal state, like a clear lake, which could reflect the changes of all things in the world. He was pondering the Tao of water he had mastered. Now he was close to breaking through the level of reincarnation developing realm, and he only needed to break through the level of Tao of water. Hualalao before long, a turbulent river rushed out of the mountain valley, like a jade belt flowing into the distance. The waves were like pearls, splashing and rolling, shining with illusory and transparent luster in the setting sun. Lin Sun stood upright by the river, meditating in meditation. His figure was tall and straight, motionless, as if he had turned into a sculpture. Until the twilight faded and the night fell, he turned around and floated away. The best is like water. Because it has nothing, it can enter into no space, omnipresent and endless. At night, Lin Sun sat quietly by a stream, immersed in meditation both physically and mentally. Nothing in the world is weaker than water, and no one who is strong can defeat it. This is called the combination of softness and hardness. The next morning, Lin Sun woke up from meditation. The moment he opened his eyes, a drop of dew slipped down from a grass leaf beside him. It was crystal and round, drawing an arc in the void and falling to the ground, breaking into strands of watermarks, and then infiltrating into the soil and disappearing. Lin Sun was stunned and seemed to understand something. After a while, he got up and continued to move forward. Rumble. In front of a quiet and secluded valley, a waterfall poured down from the precipice like a white dragon, and it charged into a jade-green pond, causing a myriad of waves to splash up. Lin Sun had been standing here for a day and a night, watching the waterfall, the spray, the mist, the ripples and waves of the green pool. Lin Sun squatted down and looked at a rock on the side of the green pool when it was late at night, sparkling with the starlight. There were many honeycomb-like holes on the surface of the rock, and the diameter was only as thick as a thumb. There were many honeycomb-like holes on the surface of the rock, and the diameter was only the thickness of a thumb. Lin Sun murmured, "The waterfall, the spray, the mist, the ripples, the waves are ever-changing, demonstrating the essence of water to the extreme. However, all the changes are the same as the essence of water." All kinds of understanding flowed into Lin Sun's heart like a trickle, making his chi as clear and mellow as water. Before Lin Chi Lin, he, mountain and water. Lin rose and rose. Lin. He stretched out his 5 fingers and waved casually. Some water droplets splashed out of the waterfall, as if they were controlled, were suddenly elongated from round and clear, and turned into tiny needle-like, sharp water swords, crystal clear. Clatter, as soon as they appeared, they shot out of the valley. The night was as dark as ink. It was dark and quiet outside the valley, but now there was a muffled sound, as if something heavy had fallen to the ground. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun appeared here. There were 6 corpses lying on the ground, with a bloody hole where their hearts were, still bleeding. Their eyes were wide open with a look of horror. They came so fast. Lin Sun frowned. The corpses on the ground were the strong men of the Black Demon Dog tribe, which made him realize that from tonight on, the journey was destined to be turbulent again. Moreover, since the Black Demon Dog tribe didn't intend to stop, they would definitely send out a stronger force than before. However, Lin Sun didn't worry about anything. Unless a Real king appeared, it would be difficult for others to threaten him. On the 7th day after leaving Snow Maple City, Lin Sun's body sank little by little in the depths of a vast lake in the mountains. In the process, he emptied himself and focused on perceiving the breath, power, flow, and rhythm of the water, until he sank to the bottom of the lake. Lin Sun opened his eyes and waved his palm. A whirlpool suddenly appeared in the water and rotated rapidly. Soon, the whirlpool accumulated more and more water, making a rumbling sound. Then, the vast lake was stirred, setting off stormy waves, and a huge whirlpool water column appeared, rushing up to the sky. Boom! At that moment, it was like a white dragon rushing out of the lake, spinning wildly, rolling up thousands of waves, making the lake water boil. Looking carefully, the void seemed to be broken into pieces, turning into turbulent flows. More than a dozen black figures, men and women, appeared on the lakeside. At this moment, they all looked at the whirlpool water column in the middle of the lake in surprise. Whoosh! After the water rushed to the clouds, it turned into a heavy rain and poured down. Suddenly, the area was covered with misty rain and dyed with gorgeous and dreamy rainbows. Noiselessly, like a dream, like a thread, the rain fell on the bodies of those men and women. Puff! Puff! Suddenly, a terrible scene appeared. Those men and women had no time to react. Their bodies seemed to be cut by thousands of sharp blades and fell to the ground with blood and flesh. In the distance, the lake was bright and misty, while the lakeside silently turned into a bloody purgatory. Corpses and bones turned into mud, and the air was full of blood. Whoosh! Lin Sun's figure floated out of the lake with his hands behind his back. Standing on the misty lake, a lot of enlightenment emerged in his heart. Small is silent, large is turbulent. It has the capacity to accommodate hundreds of rivers and unfathomable implication. It stands aloof from worldly affairs and can nourish all things. If it fights with the world, it will be invincible. In a murmur, Lin Sun's clothes fluttered, and he disappeared in the vast mountains and rivers like an immortal. From beginning to end, he didn't even look at the corpses by the lakeside, because he didn't need to look at them and know that they were spies from the Black Demon Tengu tribe. It was worth mentioning that this was the 6th batch of enemies he had killed along the way. But from this day on, the enemies that appeared on the road were obviously different. Almost all of them had the cultivation of reincarnation development realm, and they were vigilant and experienced. There was no lack of old guys who were cruel and cunning. It was getting more and more dangerous. Lin Sun had a strong sense of vigilance. He realized that he didn't have much time left. Maybe it wouldn't be long before the half-step king, or even the real kings, would come one after another. It was the 15th day since he left Snow Maple City. Boom! A fierce battle was taking place between the mountains. Lin Sun fought alone against 8 great practitioners of reincarnation development realm from the Black Demon Tengu tribe. These old guys had rich combat experience and were good at joint attacks. They were extremely difficult to deal with. However, Lin Sun was not afraid. He was surrounded by mellow and clear Tao runes, and the clear divine brilliance was like a boiling glow. Above the void, his divine power was immeasurable, and he was as brilliant as the sun, illuminating the mountains and rivers. The sound of the collision was like thunder. In this area, the mountains collapsed, the ancient trees turned into ashes, and the void was full of raging divine brilliance and secret techniques. Spiritual treasures whistled and scattered the clouds in all directions. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, the beasts wailed and ran, and the fierce birds fled in panic. The terrible fluctuations of the battle were about to turn this place into a land of devastation and death. Kill. The enemies exerted all their strength and displayed their trump cards. The power was terrible. 8 great practitioners of reincarnation development realm besieged a young man of Tao Insight realm. If this was spread out, it would definitely cause a great sensation in the West Hung world. If people knew that Lin Sun, who was alone from beginning to end, was not suppressed, but had the upper hand, they would not know what to think. Puff! An ice dragon soared into the sky, as if it was made of ice and snow. With a wave of its tail, it swept away one of the great practitioners of reincarnation development realm. His bones and muscles were broken, and he died on the spot. At this moment, the ice drake steps actually displayed a terrifying killing power that was different from the norm. Boom! The Swanee seal appeared, surging with Tao runes and water light, showing a majestic and boundless power. It broke the void and smashed a great practitioner of reincarnation development realm to the ground. His body was smashed flat, and the ground was stained with blood and flesh. At the same time, Lin Sun's fist force roared and rushed forward. The terrible Tao runes and water light appeared, with an earth-shaking and invincible spirit. Bang! The treasure was blown away with a wail. Bang! The enemy, like falling into the sea of a storm, was drowned by the mighty fist force, and then his body collapsed and disintegrated, turning into blood mist. Today, Lin Sun was really different from the past. He had an unprecedented spirit, like a majestic sea, overwhelming and invincible. Compared with the past, his power was more than a level stronger. In just a moment, the 8 great practitioners of reincarnation development realm were all killed, and no one survived. On the other hand, Lin Sun was completely unharmed. His tall and handsome figure stood upright in the void while he was surrounded by a misty Taoist light, and he seemed like an otherworldly immortal. This was the power of Tao. After many years of meditation and speculation, Lin Sun finally realized the meaning of the Tao of water from the nature of heaven and earth. Water covered all things, combining hardness and softness. There was nothing in the world that was weaker than water, and no one who was strong could defeat it. It had a myriad of changes, so it was invincible. It had no fixed shape, so it was omnipresent, able to accommodate hundreds of rivers, and unfathomable. Without struggle, all things would be silently moistened. With struggle, the world would be invincible. The ancient sages said, "The best is like water. This was the Tao of water. Different from the Tao runes of water, it was a kind of cognition and insight of the meaning of Tao, a new understanding and control of its power. If the realm of Tao runes only grasped the traces of Tao, then the realm of Tao was where the meaning of Tao was. The difference between the two was only one word, but the realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. Chapter 832. The realm of Tao meaning was the second stage of enlightenment, which was beyond the Tao aura. When a practitioner reached this realm, he could use the power of Tao meaning to integrate it into his own cultivation, such as fighting or cultivation. Generally speaking, even if it was a great practitioner who had reached the level of reincarnation developing realm, only a small number of them could comprehend the power of Tao meaning in the creation of heaven and earth. However, Lin Sun could see through the Tao meaning of water with the foundation of Tao insight realm, which was undoubtedly very unique and different from the world. He could be regarded as an anomaly. The setting sun shone, and the clouds of fire were burning. Lin Sun's figure appeared in front of a calm blue lake. The surface of the lake was clear, like a clear and bright mirror, reflecting the scenery at a glance. The images of the nearby mountains and rivers were all projected on the surface of a lake, big and small. Lin Sun's state of mind was also as calm as still water, tranquil and peaceful. He naturally perceived and understood the beauty of heaven and earth that he had never perceived before. The beauty of heaven and earth was unspoken. The four seasons were unspoken, and everything in the world was unspoken. Only by meditating and experiencing could one understand its meaning. This was a wonderful effect of the state of mind after comprehending the Tao meaning of water. The mind is as still as water and can reflect the universe. Lin Sun stood on the lakeside, opened his fist, and silently performed the mystery of 9 strikes for shaking heaven. He didn't use his cultivation, but his fist strength was filled with a kind of lustrous and translucent water essence, like flowing water and clouds, ethereal and simple, without a trace of worldly aura, which was indescribably beautiful. Clatter. On the lakeside in the distance, a ripple was set off on the calm surface of the lake, which seemed to be drawn by the invisible fist strength and resonated. After a short moment, the ripples on the lake transformed into surging and enormous waves that rumbled like thunder, and water pillars that were 300 meters tall surged like numerous water dragons that were pulled by the force of the fist and whistled through the sky. In the end, the entire heavens and the earth were filled with a myriad of streams of water. The boundless glow of water surged through the world, and it revealed a boundlessly powerful and boundless aura. The world began to tremble, the nearby mountains were shaking, and the luxuriant ancient trees were rustling. Some fierce birds and beasts living in the mountains were all trembling and fleeing. Boom! As Lin Sun became more and more engrossed in his practice, the trembling rhythm of heaven and earth became more and more intense, and the mountains and lakes were completely filled with terrifying water light. Even from 100 miles away, one could hear the surging fist energy. It was like a thunderclap from the 9 heavens. It was truly too astounding. He didn't utilize any spirit energy and merely fused the water Tao insight into his fist. Yet it deduced a terrifying might that caused the heavens and the earth to resonate and everything in the world to tremble. At this moment, Lin Sun's tall and handsome figure was surrounded by wisps of water light, which made him look unreal and unreal. Boom! Suddenly, he withdrew the force in his fist and took a step forward. An ice dragon soared into the sky, and it was an entire 3 kilometers long. Its body was like a coiled mountain ridge, and it was lustrous and crystalline. It raised its head and roared like a dragon, and it was simply like a true primeval ice dragon had appeared and moved through the world. Dragon ice steps. Crack! With a flick of its tail, a nearby mountain range collapsed. At the same time, Lin Sun suddenly raised his head, and 2 lightning-like beams shot out of his eyes. He held his hands in the air and gently pressed them down. A shocking scene appeared. The mountain that was originally collapsing and collapsing actually stopped abruptly, as if it had been shackled and fixed in place. The splashing dust and gravel all stopped there, motionless. The whole scene showed a state of stillness. Basha prohibition. All this was not the end. In the following time, Lin Sun performed the mysteries of the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon, such as Swanee Seal, Swanee Chi, Swanee Strike, Yazi Fury, Paleo Roar, etc. But different from the past, the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon, which was fused with the Water Dao insight, had produced an earth-shaking transformation and was more than twice as powerful as before. Until the night fell, Lin Sun was still performing the power of martial arts, using the Water Dao insight as the guide to rebuild his own combat effectiveness. No one knew how long it had been. Boom! Lin Sun suddenly stopped, and the terrible power that was turbulent between heaven and earth suddenly seemed to have lost its traction and dissipated. At the same time, Lin Sun's whole body was filled with a terrible momentum, which spread in all directions. In a twinkling of an eye, all the birds and beasts within a radius of 100 miles fell to the ground, shivering and paralyzed with fear. This was the terrifying aura of a peerless king, and it belonged to the might of someone at the peak of the heavenly passage realm. It was like a ruler among kings, and it affected all living creatures, causing them to tremble and feel an irresistible desire to submit to it. This is the real perfection. I finally achieved it. Lin Sun's eyes burst with brilliant light, tearing the darkness, and his whole body glowed with a kind of perfect and ethereal, unique aura. He could clearly feel the surge of his strength, which was much stronger than before. Whether it was the power of his soul or the power of his cultivation, it could be said to have skyrocketed. Soon, all the visions returned to calm. The lake was calm, sprinkled with silver starlight, sparkling. The mountains in the distance were silent, shrouded in the curtain of night. Occasionally, the sound of insects could be heard, which was very quiet. Lin Sun had a feeling that as long as he raised his hand, he could pick up the stars in the sky, and with a step, he could cross endless mountains and rivers. Of course, this was an illusion after the improvement of his strength, but Lin Sun was really powerful. If he was the king of the Tao Insight realm before, he could suppress all enemies. But now, even if there was a king of the Tao Insight realm, he was confident to suppress him easily. Next, I can start to prepare for the promotion to the Reincarnation Development realm. Lin Sun smiled, and a touch of joy flashed in his heart. As early as when he was in Xiao Empire, he had stayed in the Tao Insight realm. It was not until now that he had finally reached the perfection of this realm. This was no less than successfully climbing a dangerous peak, and there was a kind of joy of conquest and success. Here, a cold voice sounded in the distance, immediately breaking the quiet atmosphere and adding a sense of chilliness to the mountains and rivers in the night. Go! Along with the shout, the night was illuminated by the brilliant divine light. 4 or 5 figures shone all over like scorching suns as they rushed over. Each of them had a terrifying aura, and they were all in the Half-Step King realm. As soon as they attacked, the mountains and rivers couldn't bear the pressure and collapsed with a bang. The void was chaotic, and everything was in turmoil. The real danger had finally begun. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly. Half-Step King realm experts had started to travel together. This was not a good sign, and it proved that the Black Demon Tengu clan had started to get serious. Clang! Without hesitation, Lin Sun directly took out the broken blade and rushed forward to start a fierce battle. He had no intention of escaping. Now that his cultivation had improved greatly and he had comprehended the power of Tao, he was worried that he couldn't find an opponent to practice with. Moreover, Lin Sun also wanted to try how terrifying the power of the broken blade controlled by the wordless inheritance of Taoist pattern formation would be after it was integrated with the power of Water Tao. In a gorge that was densely covered in jagged rocks of grotesque shapes, Go Shuxing had his hands behind his back while he stood under the night sky with an icy cold expression. 2 old men sat cross-legged by his side. Both of them wore black robes and were senile, but they emanated a suffocating and terrifying pressure just by sitting there casually. They were called Go Yanghua and Go Yangtong. Both of them were old fellows in the king realm, and they made a name for themselves many years ago. Their strengths were even slightly stronger than Go Qi, who died at Lin Sun's hands. Old fellows like them rarely made an appearance in the world. They were either in closed-door cultivation to comprehend the secrets of immortality, or they were preparing to overcome the tribulation and attain immortality. It was utterly impossible to ask them to come for ordinary matters. But this time, they had no choice but to come. The reason was very simple. As a king of their black demon Tengu clan, Go Qi had died miserably outside without leaving a corpse. This caused the entire black demon Tengu clan to be shocked, and they were unable to tolerate this. Moreover, in the recent period of time, the news of Lin Sun repeatedly defeating the experts of their black demon Tengu clan by himself had caused an extremely shocking and mighty uproar, and it caused Lin Sun's reputation to rise greatly. But this was undoubtedly an extraordinary humiliation to their black demon Tengu clan. If they didn't kill Lin Sun, then wouldn't it mean that their entire black demon Tengu clan couldn't even do anything to a youth at the Insight Realm? How would they gain a foothold in West Hung region if that happened? Slaughter all the black demon Tengu clan in the world? This kid is really arrogant to the point he's courting death. We'll surely burn his bones and scatter his ashes this time. Go Yanghua spoke indifferently. His figure was emaciated, his eyes were long and narrow, and his aura was gloomy and ghastly. So many days have passed, yet we still haven't heard the news of this kid's death. Xuxing, is your deduction wrong? On the other side, Go Yangtong frowned as he spoke. His face was densely covered in wrinkles while his eyes were muddy, and he seemed extremely old. However, in terms of might, he wasn't inferior to Go Yanghua. Absolutely not. Go Xuxing answered resolutely. The reason he escaped last time was entirely because he possessed a treasured ship that seemed to be a sane artifact. Moreover, the reason why Lord Goda suffered at that time was because he was heavily injured by a single-horned golden-eyed beast king. It wasn't because of this kid. Right, Go Shan and Go Hai, the two half-step kings, were killed by that single-horned golden-eyed beast king as well. If we really fought, that kid wouldn't be a match for us at all. As soon as he spoke up to this point, an indescribable feeling of grievance and hatred surged in Go Xuxing's heart. The defeat last time was truly too miserable. They were completely tricked by that kid. If they were to fight head-on, that kid probably wouldn't be able to kill them, even if he had 100 lives. But why is it that after so many days have passed, we still haven't been able to capture this kid? And instead, we've lost so many clansmen. Go Yangtong's expression was cold and indifferent. Xuxing, the mistake you made last time was too severe. If it wasn't for your grandfather pleading for you and hoping to give you another chance to redeem yourself, the clan would have stripped you of your position as young master a long time ago and punished you severely. He paused for a moment before he continued. If you still don't seize this opportunity, you should be aware of the severity of the consequences even without me telling you. Go Xuxing's heart sank, and he said with a livid expression, I understand. Just now, I've already sent out 5 half-step kings. Tonight, we'll absolutely be able to take this kid's head. Go Yangtong said lightly, I hope so. If you can't do it, then we'll have to do it. But at that time, I'm afraid you won't be able to redeem yourself anymore. Go Xuxing's heart tightened, and his face became even more livid. Chapter 833. The Black Demon Tengu clan was extremely large, and its forces were spread all over the ancient Desolation region. It had hundreds of thousands of clansmen, which was an astonishing number. And there were also many direct descendants of young masters like Go Xuxing, who had the title of Thousand People Slayer. Others might not understand, but Go Xuxing knew very well how cruel and bloody the competition within the clan was. To stand out among the younger generation, one needed more than just strength. Go Xuxing's position in the clan today was all because he had stepped over piles of corpses and experienced storms of blood and storms of blood to achieve it. It looked dazzling, but Go Xuxing knew very well that once he lost his power, there would be many people in the clan who would kick him when he was down, and he would never have the chance to rise again. just like the two King Realm old monsters beside him, Go Yanbua and Go Yangtong, who seemed to be here to help him kill Lin Sun. But in fact, the two old guys wanted him to fail completely. The reason was simple. Go Yanbua and Go Yangtong were the supporters of another 1,000 people Slayer Young Master, and they were competitors with Go Xuxing's force. Therefore, even though he had suffered heavy losses, Go Xuxing would rather send his own force to kill Lin Sun than let Go Yanbua and Go Yangtong do it. Once that happened, Go Xuxing would never have the chance to redeem himself and make a comeback. This time I have to win. Go Xuxing secretly clenched his fists. He had calmly analyzed the reason for his last failure and finally came to a conclusion. As long as he didn't fall into a trap like last time and sent 5 half-step King Realm experts to kill Lin Sun together, he would definitely die. Go Xuxing even suspected that even the peerless geniuses of the entire ancient Desolation territory would be doomed if they were to face such a siege. After all, it was a group of half-step King Realm experts. Even if they were not real kings, their power was not something that a random, peerless talent could fight against. Tonight, I will wait for the good news and turn things around so that those bastards who want to kick me when I'm down will never have an excuse to attack me again. Go Xuxing murmured to himself. He inadvertently glanced at Go Yangtong and Go Yangtong, his expression uncertain. In the mountains, the battle erupted intensely. Divine radiance engulfed everything, collapsing mountain peaks and causing rocks to crack apart. Rumbling sounds rang through the air. Boom! The snow-white saber radiance swept past a stone mountain and sliced off a section of the mountain that was thousands of feet tall, as if it was cutting through tofu. The scene was terrifying, just like the ancient saber immortals in the legends who could slice mountains and split seas. Lin Sun's figure flickered as he moved in the void. An ice dragon raised its head and roared, coiling around its body, releasing terrifying power. But even so, the situation of the 9 Revolutions 9 being besieged could not be resolved in a short time. 5 half-step kings were using their full strength, releasing boundless divine might as they activated secret arts and spirit treasures, completely sealing off the area. Rumble. Sometimes they fought fiercely above the 9 heavens, and sometimes they whistled through the vast wilderness. Mountains collapsed one after another, and the earth cracked into terrifying ravines that spread out. Some living beings didn't even have time to escape and were directly crushed on the spot. Such a scene was too horrifying to behold. If this were to happen in the city, it would definitely be a disaster that would lead to endless bloodshed. Little bastard, hand over your life. Amidst an icy cold shout, an old man charged over. He held a brilliant and glowing scroll in his hand. The sun, moon, and stars were reflected within the scroll, and they cycled through it. Ciphers surged out like a torrential rain, and they were filled with terrifying, crushing force. This was a unique and miraculous ancient treasure. Once the scroll was unfolded, it seemed to be able to cover the heavens and the earth, and it enveloped everything within it and completely refined them. On the other side, a mighty middle-aged man's wrist shook and a blood-red spear flashed out. Layer upon layer of spear images pierced through space and emanated peerlessly terrifying penetrative force. Besides this, there was a golden hammer that emanated lightning that struck down, and it was simply like a bolt of lightning descending from the 9 heavens while raging with an aura of slaughter and destruction. The person that held the golden lightning hammer was a woman with a delicate figure, yet her imposing aura was extraordinarily ferocious and terrifying. Dazzling lightning surged on her body, and she seemed like a divine spirit that was bathed in lightning and was born. On the other hand, a man in scholar's robes stood in the surroundings. He had an indifferent expression while a golden lamp floated above his palm. This golden lamp was simple and mysterious. As the wick swayed, thousands of tiny sparks drifted out, which turned into a golden flame dragon and enveloped this area. Looking down from the sky, it was like thousands of golden lights were blooming here, bright and dazzling, and the scene was extremely terrifying. The man in scholar's robes, holding the golden lamp, was guarding the formation to prevent Lin Sun from escaping. In the face of such a siege, Lin Sun's pressure also doubled, and his expression became unprecedentedly serious. In the past, he had also killed half-step kings with the help of insignificant spiritual bow and blue sky arrow. For example, he killed a half-step king of voodoo barbarian tribe in the bloodthirsty battlefield and killed Sun Hung, the supreme elder of Lingji's sect, a few days ago. He had never really confronted a half-step king of half-step kings. But today, after comprehending the power of Tao and thoroughly reaching the Tao insight realm, Lin Sun really began to fight with a half-step king of half-step kings. Moreover, he had to face the siege of 5 half-step kings alone. The pressure was really great. Since the beginning of the battle, Lin Sun had been in a situation of being suppressed. Not to mention killing enemies, it seemed a little difficult for him to break through the siege. If it weren't for the further transformation of the power of Ice Drake steps after the integration of the power of Water Tao, Lin Sun was likely to have been seriously injured. But anyway, Lin Sun finally resisted this kind of suppression. Moreover, in the fierce battle, Lin Sun was honing himself by fusing the Yuan inheritance of Taoist formation diagram with the Tao meaning of water, so as to deduce a brand new spirit control technique, so that the broken blade also began to show the true power of a divine weapon, a magic weapon. It was a rare, secret treasure. Even the real kings rarely owned it. In ancient times, there were too many incredible and horrible rumors about a magic weapon. When some ancient powerful figures used a magic weapon, they could completely cut the heaven and earth, destroy the universe, and mess up yin and yang, which was extremely terrifying. Even though the broken blade was damaged, it was a true magic weapon after all. In the past, Lin Sun was limited by his cultivation, so he was utterly unable to fully display the might of the broken blade. But now all of this was changing. The effects of comprehending the Tao inside of water were absolutely beyond imagination, and it allowed Lin Sun's control of the broken blade's might to start to change. Rumble. The mighty middle-aged man held a blood-red spear in his hand, and he crushed the void as he tore through the sky with a shocking momentum. Bang! The broken blade spun and flowed with a white and illusory holy luster. Even though it was blasted back, it dealt with this lethal move. This caused the mighty middle-aged man to frown and feel slight disbelief. 5 half-step kings had attacked together, yet they were unable to kill a young man at the Tao Insight realm in a short period of time. This was undoubtedly unbelievable. If news of this were spread, probably no one would believe it. It wasn't just him. The other 4 half-step kings couldn't calm down as well, and the gazes they shot at Lin Sun had changed. What kind of freak was he? He was so young and only at the Tao Insight realm, yet he was able to persist until now while being besieged by 5 half-step kings. This was simply no different from defying the heavens. In the younger generation of the 4 great worlds of the ancient Desolation region, even if it was a peerless genius, unless he utilized a heaven-defying secret treasure, otherwise it would probably be difficult for him to accomplish this. But now, such a young man had done it. This was undoubtedly too shocking, and once news of this were spread, it would surely cause a great uproar and stir. Kill! The old man who held the painting shouted loudly. This kid must not be allowed to survive this time. Otherwise, not only will the young master be implicated, it might even cause our clan to face the threat of a peerless enemy in the future. Rumble. The old man's might grew even more terrifying, and the painting expanded into the heavens and the earth while the sun, moon, and stars circulated and produced a terrifying, obliterating force. At the same time, the hearts of the other 4 half-step kings turned cold as they realized the severity of the problem. According to the terrifying reserves and strength this kid revealed now, there was no doubt that once he was allowed to grow, he would absolutely become a peerless enemy that defied the heavens. Kill! They were all ruthless and used their trump cards. For a moment, the divine light was dazzling, and the spiritual treasures soared into the sky, illuminating the whole world. The scene was appalling. However, at this moment, a cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes, and he suddenly laughed loudly. "Do you still want to kill me now? It's too late." With a loud shout, Lin Sun's whole body produced a roar, and the rolling cyan divine light diffused and spread, making him look like a cyan sun, illuminating the world, mountains, and rivers. Inside his body, his essence, chi, and spirit were burning like smoke, reaching an unprecedented state of perfection. At this moment, the power of his spirit was as calm and clear as ice and snow. This was a kind of extreme power. At this moment, Lin Sun's power was greatly enhanced by the saint method of battle and the wrath of Yazi. The old man who held the painting was completely moved, and his pupils shrank. He didn't expect that at this time, this young man should suddenly burst out such a shocking power. Swish! The illusory and ethereal broken blade that was jade, white like snow, flashed out. Unlike before, strands of obscure and mysterious markings of the Tao actually seethed on the surface of the blade. That terrifying aura made even the heavens and earth dim and wail. The old man's expression changed again. He shouted, "Not good," and did his best to resist. Whoosh! The painting of the sun, moon, and stars in his hand was like a piece of cloth. It was easily torn in half. Then, with a puff, the old man felt a chill on his neck, and his head was directly thrown into the air. He didn't even have time to react. That kind of power was too sharp. Even the elder's soul was destroyed at the same time, instantly obliterated. It was because the power of the Tao markings on the broken blade was too terrifying and incomparable, and it seemed as if there was nothing it couldn't destroy. All of this happened too quickly, and no one had imagined that merely a single slash would actually possess such divine might that shook the heavens and the earth. What was indestructible? That was it. Even half-step king realm warriors couldn't block it, and they were caught off guard by the blade's edge. Chapter 834. Lin Sun's strike was too sharp. It was like a flash of lightning, and a half-step king realm expert was killed on the spot. The moment Lin Sun appeared, the old man couldn't believe it. How could such a strike come from a young man at Tao Insight Realm? Unfortunately, he didn't have time to think. His soul was destroyed, and he was killed on the spot. The death of the old man shocked the other 4 half-step king realm experts, and they almost cried out. They couldn't imagine how such a scene could happen. What kind of strike was this? It seemed to be invincible, and invincible. Boom! The momentum of the broken blade didn't diminish. A crack was cut open in the void, and it spread straight to the front of a mountain. The mountain was directly flattened and collapsed. Then, the broken blade flashed lightly and returned to Lin Sun. At this time, Lin Sun's body was shining like the sun, making people unable to look at him directly. He was like a god. A broken blade as white as snow surrounded his body, shocking the soul and illuminating the mountains and rivers. Swish! Without hesitation, he operated the battle saint method and the fury of Yazi to the fullest. His whole body had a kind of power that could swallow the ages. He controlled the broken blade and rushed forward. "Hurry up! Let's attack together!" The middle-aged man roared and slashed out with the bloody spear in his hand. On the other side, the figure of the woman bathed in lightning flickered. She waved a lightning golden hammer, and she was fierce and tyrannical. With a swish, another thin man moved like a ghost. His eyes burst with bloodlight, and he took out a long and narrow awl and attacked Lin Sun silently. The man in a scholar's robe who stood outside also moved. Buzz! With a light flick of his slender fingers, a golden lamp in his palm rose up, and like a furnace of chaos, it poured out a terrifying torrent of golden flames and covered Lin Sun. The golden flames were like a sea, magnificent, and had an amazing power to incinerate. It burned the void to the point of collapse, and many black holes appeared. Blood spear, thunderhammer, sharp awl, golden lamp, exotic treasures, and magical techniques poured out, causing this world to fall into a fierce battle. The sky was dark, and the earth was dark. Sand and stones were flying in the air, accompanied by the deafening sound of explosions. All of this vividly displayed the might of 4 half-step kings. And if it was any other cultivator, that cultivator would have probably been annihilated on the spot. However, unlike before, Lin Sun seemed to have become a completely different person. His entire body was suffused with Tao insight, while divine radiance rumbled, and he was extremely powerful and arrogant. The broken blade flashed through the sky like an imposing bolt of lightning, like a divine ray of light that whistled through the sky, and it was extraordinarily swift and peerlessly sharp. Obscure markings of the Tao seethed on its surface, and it emanated a terrifying fluctuation that caused even gods and devils to tremble. It simply seemed capable of crushing gods and devils. This was the power of the king of the first realm, known as the most powerful way of cultivation. Lin Sun used the saint method and the fury of Yazi to run it to an unprecedented extreme. It could even be said that this was the first time that Lin Sun had exerted his full strength without reservation. His blood was boiling and his fighting spirit was burning, which gave him a kind of absolute confidence and boldness to be fearless, as if he could sweep through the world. Bang! After a short moment, an all exploded into pieces. The thin man cried out in alarm and dodged in panic, but his figure suddenly showed a trace of sluggishness. This was the might of the lower tyrant restriction, and it was capable of producing a shapeless and profound effect of confinement. In the past, it was utterly incapable of being effective against half-step kings. However, after it fused with the Tao inside of water, the lower tyrant restriction had undergone a transformation, and as soon as it was executed, it instantly caught the thin man off guard. Even if it merely caused the thin man's figure to show a trace of sluggishness, it was sufficient to be lethal in such an intense battle. Pooh! As expected, Lin Sun seized this opportunity, and the broken blade flashed lightly before slashing the thin man into two at the waist. Blood flowed like a waterfall, and the thin man died on the spot amidst a shrill cry. Logically speaking, it was extremely difficult for half-step kings to be killed. Their soul cores had developed intelligence, and they were supported by the energy of the grand Tao they possessed. So long as their soul cores didn't perish, then they would have a chance to rise from the dead. But the strength of the broken blade was too terrifying. It was a peerless divine weapon, and the obscure energy of the Tao, suffused, it was capable of instantly annihilating one's soul core. In other words, so long as one was killed by the broken blade, then even a god would be unable to save that person, and it was bound to be impossible for that person to come back to life. Another half-step king had been killed. This bloody scene caused the expressions of the remaining 3 half-step kings to go pale, and they were shocked and furious to the extreme. No matter how they racked their brains, they were unable to imagine how such a strange and unbelievable thing could have occurred. Their hearts trembled and were unable to calm down, and their expressions became livid and gloomy. As they fought, they seemed to become even more violent and terrifying. But all of this seemed to be in vain. At this moment, Lin Sun was immersed in a form of tempering, and he was tempering the broken blade's completely new might. Along with him, gradually fusing the Yuan character inheritance of the Tao marking formation diagram with the water Tao insight, the might of the broken blade rose step by step. The broken blade became even more dazzling to the point it seemed ethereal, and it revealed a world-shocking sharpness that was too dazzling to the point others were unable to look at it directly. On the other hand, obscure Tao markings surged and suffused its surface, and its might caused even Lin Sun himself to be shocked and surprised. Is this the true might of the broken blade? Lin Sun realized that all of this was surely related to the energy of the Tao insight he grasped. Perhaps it was precisely the energy of the Tao insight that awakened the true might of the broken blade. Bang! It wasn't long before the golden lightning hammer was directly shattered into pieces, and it transformed into a violent rain of light that sprayed down. On the other hand, the beautiful face of the woman with a delicate figure and an extremely ferocious and overbearing aura turned ghastly pale, and her figure staggered back while emitting a sharp cry. She finally felt panic and terror, and it caused all the hairs on her body to stand on end. It was too formidable. That broken blade was like a divine artifact in the hands of a god, and at that instant earlier, she almost thought she was going to die. Crack! However, before she could recover from her shock, she saw that the mighty man and the blood-red spear in his hand had been instantly slashed into two. Before he died, the mighty man still maintained a charging posture with his eyes wide open with rage. But in the end, his figure transformed into a rain of blood that crashed to the ground along with the broken spear. He's dead. An indescribable coldness surged out from the depths of her heart and suffused her entire body, causing the woman to feel as if she'd fallen into an icy pit and her soul almost left her body. Swoosh! She didn't hesitate in the slightest to turn around and flee as if she'd gone mad. The scenes from before seemed to be so inconceivable and unreal, and it was too bloody and terrifying. It caused a half-step king realm like her to feel terrified and uneasy. She was unable to imagine exactly what sort of terrifying reserves that young man possessed to be able to seem so heaven-defying and world-shocking. She was similarly unable to imagine exactly what sort of treasure that dazzling to the point of seeming illusory broken blade was to be able to possess such invincible might. All she knew was, if she didn't flee now, then she wouldn't have another chance. Going, you actually abandoned me and fled? The furious roar of the man who held the golden lamp sounded out from behind her. It carried extreme disappointment. The woman called Going gritted her teeth and didn't speak. She was fleeing because if she stayed, then she would definitely die. Since it was like that, then why didn't she flee? Bang! When she fled an entire 500 kilometers away, Going suddenly heard a terrifying rumbling sound coming from extremely far away. She swiftly turned around and spread out her divine sense, and she instantly noticed that in the distant battlefield, golden flames were raining down like a rain of light, and they covered the heavens and the earth. It was a magnificent and gorgeous scene. However, the figure of the man in scholar's robe was nowhere to be seen. He's dead. Going felt bitter and sorrowful in her heart. She was unable to imagine that when all 5 of them half-step kings had set out together for the sake of dealing with a young man at the Paradise Realm, they would suffer such an outcome. At the same time, she couldn't help but feel fortunate in her heart. If she hadn't fled quickly, then she would have probably suffered calamity as well, and it would be no different than being completely annihilated. Go Ying's entire body shivered, and she noticed that the handsome young man was looking towards her from afar with her divine sense. His figure was handsome, his clothes fluttered in the wind, and his black hair was suffused with a bright sheen. As he stood in the sky that was covered in golden flames, it caused his figure to flicker and be enveloped in a wisp of a mysterious and terrifying aura. He was like a fiend god that commanded the world during the primordial times. Even though they were 500 kilometers apart, Going seemed to have noticed that pair of eyes that were deep like an abyss had already locked onto her from afar, and those eyes were filled with piercingly cold and emotionless. Flee! Going seemed as if she'd suffered extreme terror, and she didn't dare hesitate any longer before turning around and fleeing. A dignified half-step king from the Black Nightmare Tengu clan had been terrified to such an extent from 500 kilometers away. If news of this were spread, it would surely cause a mighty uproar in the West-hung world. You're lucky to have fled quickly. Amidst the golden flames that covered the sky, Lin Sun, who stood upright in the sky, withdrew his gaze. He didn't pursue Going, and his figure flashed before he started to clean up the battlefield. In merely a short moment, he'd floated away with 4 storage treasures and an ancient golden lamp, and he vanished under the boundless veil of night. The battlefield recovered its calm. However, the ground was covered in smoke and a mess. The ground was split open, the mountains and rivers that had collapsed, the vegetation that had been destroyed, and the living beings that had died miserably and been reduced to ashes. Everything seemed to be telling the story of how terrifying and earth-shattering that duel had been. Judging from the time, there should be news by now. In the gorge, Go Shushing frowned. He was slightly anxious and uneasy in his heart, but his expression was still calm and steady. Shushing, it's just a waste of time to delay any longer. We don't have too much energy to wait here. Go Yanbo spoke indifferently, and he was a little dissatisfied. If we had attacked from the very beginning, that brat would have been killed long ago. Why do we have to keep waiting here? Go Yantong also snorted coldly. Go Shushing was furious. He knew that these two old guys had no good intentions, and they couldn't wait to see him lose so that they could hit him when he was down and make him completely unable to raise his head in the clan. Let's wait a little longer. Go Shushing didn't bother to cover up, and his tone was firm. He wasn't afraid that these two old guys would dare to do anything to him. Go Yanbo and Go Yantong frowned when they saw this, but in the end, they chuckled and said no more. They didn't want to push Go Shushing too hard. Young master, it's bad. Suddenly, a bitter and dejected voice came from afar. Go Ying's figure appeared along with the voice. Her pretty face was pale, and her eyes were filled with guilt and unwillingness. She actually didn't dare to look Go Shushing in the eyes. Immediately, Go Shushing's expression changed drastically. He suppressed the panic in his heart and said, "What happened? Why are you the only one who returned? Where are the others?" "They're all dead." Going lowered her head and spat out the words with difficulty. However, these three words were like a bolt from the blue. It made Go Shushing's body stiffen, and he was completely stunned. "They're all dead?"